for the audio. Good evening, honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. This evening, there are 4 budget hearings scheduled. We have Audit Department at 4:30, Mayor's Office of Economic Development at 5:15, Human Resources Department at 6:15, and Law Department at 7:30. I would like to first start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee that are in attendance this evening. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District. Councilmember Walsh, I know is going to be late. Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Present.
And Councilmember Spadola, I believe, will be late. And Council President Congo. All right. I would like to also recognize, and as a reminder, can folks remember to put yourselves on mute if you're not speaking? Okay, thank you. I also like to recognize other council persons in attendance by doing a roll call. Councilmember Gray, 1st District. Councilmember Darby, 2nd District. Councilmember Fields, 5th District.
Present.
Councilmember McCoy, 6th District.
Here.
Councilmember Cabrera, at large. Councilmember Mills, at large.
Present.
All right. Thank you. Mayor Purzycki presented a proposed budget to council on March 17th. The proposed budget included a proposed 7.5% property tax increase, 5% water rate increase, and use of $12 million in ARPA funds to plug holes in our revenue stream. This proposed budget from the mayor includes $0 from the tax stabilization fund in order to balance our budget. The proposed general fund budget total is $176.9 million. This is a $4.2 million increase. The proposed water sewer fund budget is a total of $82.1 million. This is a $2.5 million increase. This is an odd year, so the city will have a 0 capital budget program. The mayor shared his vision for the intended planned use of the city's funds. Now it is council's fiduciary responsibility to review the budget, have budget hearings, and to get a complete plan for how to use the city's funds. By charter, council must adopt a balanced budget at least 30 days before the end of the next fiscal year. Council has shared its priorities with the mayor, which are inclusive of public safety, which includes gun violence prevention programs, citizen oversight boards, neighborhood stabilization, education, economic development, and investment in our parks. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the world immensely. Nonetheless, the city has received its first installment of ARP funds, and it anticipates receiving the second installment in May or June for a total of $55 million in American Rescue Fund. Just to be clear, the American Rescue Funds for this budget cycle, the proposed budget will be $12 million. Before I turn it over to Mr. Jones, I would like to inform everyone that public comment will be at the end of each department's budget hearings, and we look forward to ample engagement from the public. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If there's any follow-up information during the budget hearings, Ms. Marshall Bassnight will track and follow up on these requests. I asked if my colleagues have any questions. As always, please use the raise hand feature. And now, without further ado, I turn it over to Mr. Jones from OMB Fiscal and Operational Department for a financial overview of the city, followed by an introduction, brief presentation by City Auditor, Mr. Terrence Williams, and then we'll have a question and answer by council. This hearing is slated for 45 minutes. The floor is yours, Mr. Jones.
All right, thank you. Could you please load up the presentation, please? All right, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Council President, and honorable members of City Council. This evening, I would like to present the Audit Department's FY 2023 proposed budget request on behalf of the Office of Management and Budget. Funding for the Audit Department is derived from both the General and Water Sewer Fund. The General Fund request is $906,000 and represent an increase of $57,000 or 6.7% from FY 2022. Next slide, please. The Water Sewer Fund request, which consists of materials, supplies, and equipment, or MS&E, is budgeted at $84,000, with MS&E essentially remaining at the same level with an increase of about $400 or 0.5% from FY 2022. Next slide. Thank you. Personal services increased by $37,534 or 5.8%. This increase was driven by regular salaries of $22,442 and employee benefits up $15,000 respectively. For MS&E, travel increased by $10,000 following the lift of COVID-19 mandates that limited in-person continuing professional education or CPE credits. Accounting costs also increased by $9,000 for external audit assistance. This concludes my presentation of the FY 2023 proposed budget request for the Audit Department. I'm happy to answer any additional questions at this time. Thank you.
All right, and before I turn over to Mr. Williams, I would just like to recognize that Council Member Oliver is present, and I believe Council President Congo as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do have a question.
Okay, the floor is yours, Council Member.
Thank you. Can you go back to the last slide? It was an increase of salaries. And I know we're laying off, and I just wanted to know where that right there. Salaries, oh, it's not much, but when he says regular salary increase, where did that come from? And personal services of 37. Could you explain that, please?
Yes, ma'am, 1 second.
Mm-hmm. I guess that whole
Just from our cost of living 2% COLA that we hand out regularly to every employee for the city. So just that has just been added as we do with every employee here in the city due to the 2% cost of living and adjustment.
Okay, in that increase, how many salaries are we talking about? Because that's not for everybody. Because is the breakdown with that five
employees, miss.
5 employees?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you could you not now, but could you send over to Marshall Bassett the departments or the employees who received that 5%, please? And lastly, the accountant for $9,000 internal audit assistance. What does that mean?
I'd just like to defer that to the city auditor during this presentation. He'll be able to address that.
Thank you so much, Wilms. But will you be able to send over to Marshall, acting chief of staff, that I'd like to know what department them 5 salaries consist of? I don't need to know the names.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you. Good job. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. And leave WITN, there's some technical issues with Mr. Williams. If we're able to rectify that.
Yes, I'll send him a chat.
Okay. All right. So I apologize, everyone. The auditor is having some technical issues. We look to be right back in hopefully a minute.
So are you able to read that, John?
Your mic's on, whoever's speaking.
Chairman Johnson, I've asked Auditor Williams to leave and rejoin, and I believe he's rejoining now.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening.
Are we able to see him?
Yes, he's now in the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Chairman Johnson. Sorry for the technical difficulty. My video was working initially.
No problem, Mr. Williams. So the floor is yours, and if you want to introduce who's there with you, and then we can get started.
Okay. I'd like to say good evening to you again, Mr. Chairman Johnson, Vice Chair Harley, Council President Congo, and all members of council joining us tonight. By my side, I have Tamara Thompson, the audit manager for my department, and we're honored to be here to present our presentation.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I think he was, thank you. I think he was off when I asked the question relating to the last slide of the 9,000%. I don't know if he heard that when he said his presentation. I was
Okay, and thank you very much, council member. I think we do have the salary increase question in there.
Okay.
It's
Thank
actually
you.
question number 6. So we'll get to that in a bit. But Auditor Williams, I just wanted you to give a brief overview, and then we can dive right into it.
Thank you. Sorry.
As everyone knows, the past few years have been very challenging due to the pandemic and also with the cybersecurity issues that we've been dealing with. And due to those things, the vision for my department is to maintain an efficient approach to the overall audit process, to provide an independent and objective perspective to an accountable government, and to provide efficient and effective audits and look for ways to help improve controls and processes at the city. Next slide, please. The top 3 priorities for my department are to conduct quality audits and monitoring of high-risk transactions on a continuous basis, provide timely and consistent audit follow-ups with management and the audit review committee on a quarterly basis, and to improve our monitoring of fraudulent activities. Next page, please. The top 3 performance measures for our department are completed audits, reporting the status of management action plans, which consist of whether the audits are implemented, whether they're open, whether they're past due with action taken, or past due with no action taken from the process owners. And we also look at the fraud calls that are investigated. Next slide, please. Discussing the budgetary resources pertaining to ARPA funding to ensure the city is within compliance for eligible uses based upon federal guidelines. Currently, this does not impact our department because the city is utilizing UHY advisors from Mid-Atlantic, Maryland, as a consultant to monitor ARPA compliance surrounding eligibility. Even though the city has engaged with UHY to monitor ARPA spending, my department has maintained an open dialogue with UHY regarding the city's compliance. Next slide, please. The administration has proposed a 7.5% property tax rate increase, sharing improving audit initiatives and processes to enhance the budgetary operational efficiencies, to assist with combating escalating expenditures, and to increase the financial wealth of the city. During the next fiscal year, our department and designated process owners from other departments will have better monitoring capabilities if the third line contract, which will provide data analytics in real time, is approved by City Council. This should help enhance our monitoring of escalating expenditures, as well as help improve budgetary operational efficiencies. Next slide, please.
Okay, and then Auditor Williams, this goes into the next question about the financial stakes that we have now post-pandemic or in the pandemic is, how are you going to analyze the hybrid work schedules and look at how wage taxes are, of course, affected?
Okay.
Good question.
We are aware of the impact of wage tax collections on the city's budget and the current audit being conducted by Avenue Insights Analytics for the Finance Department. Once this engagement is completed, we will review the findings and follow up with the management to ensure action plans are in place. Next slide, please.
Okay, and then so this technology request, that's tied to the new wage tax software, right?
Not necessarily, but we will be able to see all transactions that are processed through Munis. The new technology request is for third line, which is a reporting software.
Okay.
Specifically for municipal analytics and monitoring. This software will help serve as a fraud deterrent, provide quick audit results, assist in assessing transactional risk, and identifying process bottlenecks within the city's enterprise resource planning system, which is our ERP system, Tyler Munis. Third line is designed to monitor Munis system data and flag high-risk transactions across the city in real time, which may require further review. Monitoring will take place in various ERP modules such as payroll, purchasing, and accounts payable, to name a few. Next slide, please.
And before I begin, I would like to, before you go to the next question, I would like to recognize Councilmember Darby. And Councilmember Darby, is there a question?
No, I just wanted to be recognized. That was it. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So let's dive into question number 5, Auditor. I know we ask this every year, but can you go over your department's planned number of audits and the numbers for the past few years?
Okay. We recently sent out our FY2023 annual risk assessment and are waiting for responses to formulate the audit plan. For FY22, we plan to conduct 15 audits. 5 audits have been completed to date. 3 audits are close to being completed. 3 audits are in the planning phase. 1 audit was canceled due to it being considered low risk after reviewing their external audit. And for FY21, we planned 15 audits and completed 11 and carried forward 4 to the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. So we specified the number of audits that will be carried forward over FY23. At this time, we anticipate 3 audits to be carried over for FY23. Next question is specified. There was one other question there. If you can go back 1 slide, please. Specify the trigger mechanism that determines if an audit will be done externally versus in-house. The nature of the audit drives a lot of that, as far as required level of expertise needed and the availability of staff and resources are considered during whether it's necessary to outsource an audit or not.
All right. Auditor Williams, going to question 6. I believe this is the question. Well, actually, before we get there, Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I noticed that you have a number of audits here, and we're talking about audits right now. My question to you, Mr. Williams, do your department do internal audits before the external auditors come in to look at different areas. And the reason why I asked that question is because there may be opportunities for us to catch things in-house before an external auditor catches these things. And so I'm just curious to know, when you're talking about these audits, are you talking about any internal audits that the external auditors look at, or any of these audits included in the audits that external auditors look at?
This slide specifically talks about the fees that we pay to the external auditors. And
yeah, and my question was on a previous slide, but I don't think Mr. Chair has seen my hand.
Was that for slide 5?
It could have been.
Okay. For those,
Maybe 4. Go back to 4. Yeah, it was 3, 4. So it must be, keep going, 4, 5. There. So when you was going over these different audits, that's when I had my hand up. You were talking about what was completed, what was planned, and et cetera. So it made me think about, and I see where you have external audits here as well. So that's why I asked, when you was talking about these particular items, it kind of, made me wanted to know if your internal audits include the audits that the external auditor looks at.
For the audits in this slide, the majority of these audits are conducted by my department. And we have 2 audits that are being conducted by a third party, an external third party. They're not our external auditors, but they're consultants that we've utilized in the past. Avenue Insights Analytics, we're utilizing them for the franchise audit, as well as lodging tax audit.
A quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. So do you have the opportunity to look at some of HUD's, documents, like what the things that HUD looks at? Do you have the opportunity to look at these particular documents? Does your audits include those particular documents and areas? And I'm only asking this question to think about going forward, not necessarily thinking about the past or anything like that. I was just thinking about opportunities that we could possibly have within our own auditing department to look at things before our external auditor looks at them. And so I was just curious to know if that includes, if your audits includes any work that looks like that. That's all.
Okay, I believe Chief of Washington has her hand raised.
Yes, if I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Harley, but I think you're trying to ask the question as to the distinction between what the external auditors do and Mr. Williams does. He mainly focuses on our internal controls. I think the external auditor really looks at our financial statements on a broader scale. But Mr. Williams really digs in on the internal controls and how we perform certain functions. You could correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Williams.
I think there is a distinction between what our department does and our external auditors, but in some instances, there are some overlap where we may perform an engagement. And the external auditors, they receive all of our audits, and they may utilize some of our engagements to incorporate in their report as well. And there are times where they may conduct an audit, and then we utilize what they have done to help us know what to look for to see if it's mitigated when we go and perform our audit. Like later this year, if we're able to get to our federal funding audit, we will be looking at some federal programs. Tamara, would you like to say anything?
And I'll, excuse me, I also want to share that in the past, probably not in this group, but we have looked at HUD projects. So like different things that are within the real estate and housing department, like the home fund. So like, it periodically comes up as a part of our risk assessment, and we look at those things. I'm not sure if it was I don't think there were any in these group that we're looking at though. So to answer your question, we do look at the HUD stuff when it's on our audit plan.
From an internal auditing perspective, we can look at everything at the city, and what typically drives what we look at would be the annual risk assessment. So if we have a number of responses that let us know that this is potentially a problem area, that's something that we will try to incorporate into the audit plan for the next fiscal year. That's why it's so important for everyone to take the time to answer the annual risk assessment, because it really drives what we do.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you. You can move on.
And thank you, Chief of Staff Washington.
Okay, all right, so if we can go back to question 6, Auditor Williams, just can you talk about the approximately $9,000 increase, and also, what the consultant line is used for?
Yes, we have external consultants who work with us throughout the year on different engagements. And so we have those funds just in case we need them. So that's what the 9,000 is there for. As far as the 189,000, that's for our external audits, Dolphin, Lyons, and Schumann. And we have 35,000 that we have outside of the external audit fees. If, say, additional work is required for the finance department, we have those funds set aside to chip in with that if need be. And that's consistent with how our budget was last year as well.
Understood. All right. Just going to question number. Actually, let's skip question number 7. Or are you done with question 6?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Now, actually, one thing I did notice, Auditor Williams, I know we've probably talked about this previous years. I see that there is no DBE for a contractor. What steps have been taken to address this issue? As I know, it's a question that's been asked before about this firm.
Yes, and as far as the DBE with Dolphin, Lyons, and Schumann, they do a lot of things in the community. They have minorities on their staff, but they don't have anything per se set up with the DBE.
And by minorities on your staff, are they CPAs, higher level accountants, or are they lower level workers?
That we would have to follow up with George Veneris from Dolphin, Lyons, and Schumann. And I think in the past, they've shared information about how they plan on addressing things in the future, as far as bringing on minority staff on engagements.
Ms. Bassnight and I will follow up, but I know this is an issue we've addressed in the past, and maybe we can address it in a future finance meeting. Just about what the updates are, what their summer program looks like, and things like that.
And I know when we sent out the proposal, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, the floor is yours.
I was going to say, when we sent out the proposal for the contract, that was something that was in the contract as well. So we definitely make sure that we highlight that with everyone that we consider for the engagement.
Okay, excellent. Chief of Staff Washington, is there a question or comment?
I'm sorry, I never lowered my hand.
Sorry
About that.
No problem.
Apologize.
Council Member Oliver, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to go back and reiterate what you just stated, because we have mentioned this on several occasions. So I'm surprised that Mr. Williams hasn't checked into the DBE a little deeper, because ever since he's been here, we've been mentioning that. And just to hear that, it's in when he said it's in the proposal, what's in the proposal? Could he answer that question when he keeps saying that's in the proposal? What is he talking about in particular?
In the multi-year contracts that we send out, we have the questions in there surrounding DBEs and minority participation. And that's something that, before the audit was, before the contract was signed, it was communicated to the various candidates to provide information about it. So it would be in the actual proposal. And I know Belfin followed up afterwards with some information about what they intended to do. And I'm sure the pandemic has a lot to do with things and how it's hard to find help right now. It's hard to maintain staffing levels. They're losing staff. It's hard to bring in new candidates as well.
Thank you. May I follow up?
Yes, please.
Okay, I just didn't know when he was saying was in the proposal. I wasn't clear of that. My question is about the hospitalization and budget and why here 22 to 23, I see the increase. Is that because of COVID? I mean, it just says 73 and it's now 116 in 2023. Would that have something to do with COVID at all? I mean, because I see in 22, so I'm just a little confused or not necessarily.
I'm not certain where you're at right now. Let me flip back.
I'm on page 102. And the hospitalization, I was just wondering, I looked at FY22 and FY23, and it just looked, it was a little increase. And I was just wondering, was that because of COVID or not necessarily?
Councilmember Oliver.
No. I'm looking at the life insurance. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong line. Wait a minute. Am I? No,
I don't think
I'm on hospital. No, I'm on the right line. I'm sorry.
I don't think that's for audit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm on audit administration page 102.
Yes, so.
Chief of Staff Washington, just,
Yeah.
I don't want to
Chairman,
interrupt. I just want to be able to correct the answer.
So Chairman Johnson, that's really reflective of the hospitalization costs across the city. So each department gets an allotment, but that's a number that we have no control over. That's pretty much based on our past costs and expenses, and it's determined. I don't want to say by the actuaries, but that's a number that's not controlled by us. It comes out of HR.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. So we are running a little tight on time. So if we could skip to question 8, Auditor Williams. Okay, just can you discuss the plan used for the temp workers?
Yes, we have a part-time employee who works for a person who works for us from a temporary agency. This is for temporary services to cover the cost of part-time office assistants throughout the fiscal year.
Okay. Jumping to question 9, can you discuss briefly the last peer review that was done?
Yes. Our department successfully passed the last peer review. There were 3 observations with suggestions noted by the peer review team that had been addressed. These included, we updated our procedures to reflect the 2018 Yellow Book revision and electronic checklist, including references to all key requirements of generally accepted government auditing standards for planning, evidence, and reporting. We have changed from a fiscal year reporting to a calendar year for our continuing professional education requirements. This will be consistent with the Institute of Internal Auditors requirements for reporting hours annually. And we have updated our electronic checklist to document evaluation of computer processed information. And the department is scheduled to undergo our next peer review in October or November of 2022. Our peer review was actually delayed due to the pandemic, where they stopped going around performing them for a while. But we're hoping that we're able to get ours done within the next few months, October, November timeframe.
Okay, very well. And just lastly, skipping to question 11. And again, this is for the public. Any questions that are skipped today are addressed in full on the city's budget website, wilmbebudget.org. All the questions and a follow-up information will be on the website. So if I skip something during the live telecast, it will be fully answered in the PowerPoint. And Councilmember Oliver, was there a question?
No, just wanted to thank Terrence William and the staff for doing a great job. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And I'll just bring it home to question 11, Auditor Williams. I've asked this question in different ways, but considering departments have vetted their budget with administration, and the budget now is in City Council's purview, can you share with Council any suggestions for a 2% reduction to your proposed budget? Okay, and this is just more as a FYI, where we could look to save some funds.
Due to our department being one of the leanest budgets at the city, it would be nearly impossible for us to carry out the responsibilities required by the city code to effectively function with a decreased budget, particularly with the changes recently imposed. We recently imposed by the pandemic and cybersecurity issues. They require us to invest in new technologies to stay current with the changing times. I know at the city we experienced, some of that with in payroll with Kronos, and the ransomware attack we had.
Okay, gotcha. All right, Auditor Williams, at this time I'm going to kick it to members of the public, if there's any comments or questions. All right, seeing none, I want to then turn it back to members of council, if there's any last comments or questions by council members. All right, seeing none, I would like to thank City Auditor Williams and Mr. Jones from OMB for presenting this afternoon. Any follow-up information, as always, I ask you to provide that to Ms. Marshall Bassnight. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second? All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Well, the auditor budget hearing is adjourned, and we're running almost on schedule. So our next budget hearing, just looking at the schedule, is economic development. Let's start that at 5:18. All right. See everybody soon. BITN, do we have everyone back?
Yes, you can begin.
Good evening, honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. This time, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee budget hearing for the Mayor's Office of Economic Development. I would like to first start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee in attendance. Start with the roll call. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Present.
At large, Councilmember Walsh, I believe, is excused. At large, Councilmember Spadola. Here. Council President Congo.
Here.
I would also like to recognize other council persons in attendance by doing a roll call. Well, Councilmember Gray, 1st District.
Present.
Councilmember Darby, 2nd District.
Present.
Councilmember Fields, 5th District.
Present.
Councilmember McCoy, 6th District. Councilmember Cabrera, at large. Councilmember Mills, at large.
Present.
All right. I'd also like to inform everyone that public comments, as always, will be at the end of each department's budget hearing. And then we look forward to full participation from the public. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If there's any follow-up information requested during the budget hearings, Ms. Marshall Bassnight, Acting Chief of Staff, will track and follow up on these requests. I ask that if my colleagues have any questions, please use the raise hand feature. And at this time, I will then turn it over to Mr. Winkler, who's an OMB manager, followed by a presentation by OED Director Flynn, and then question and answer by council. Floor is yours, Mr. Winkler.
Good afternoon, Chairman Congo, and good afternoon, President Congo and council members. Today, I'm going to be providing an overview of the proposed FY 2023 budget for the Office of Economic Development, or OED. If we get the next slide. All right, so the proposed FY 2023 budget, including the Small and Minority Business Enterprise Office, or SMBEO, is nearly $1.2 million, which is down $9,600 or 0.8% compared to the FY22 budget. Total staffing is 5 FTE, which is unchanged from FY22. Next slide, please. All right, so looks like we may actually have the wrong presentation here. Yeah. I can quickly run through the changes in any case.
Yeah, that's fine unless WITN can maybe work on that. But if you have your we can keep.
All right, so major funding changes for this year. So first, personal services are up $23,000, which is due mainly to normal cost of living adjustments. And on the MS&E side, advertising costs increased by $4,400, which will further expand city-oriented promotional content. In addition, consultant costs increased by $15,000 in order to provide additional engineering and architectural support to handle redevelopment plans and feasibility studies. And finally, the Curbside Wilmington program, which is budgeted in the donation community services line, has been reduced by $30,000. All right, so those are the major OED funding changes for FY 2023. If you have any questions, I am more than happy to take them now. Otherwise, I return the floor to you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Winkler. I don't see any hands specifically for OMB. So without further ado,
I can't find, excuse me, of course, I can't find my hand. I have a question.
Okay, Councilmember Gray. Yes.
Thank you. I thought there was going to be money allotted for minority businesses for either help or classes. Since I don't have a visual, is there any money in the budget for minority businesses?
So I can't speak for Director Flynn, but I believe this is a question that is addressed.
Okay, thank you.
In question number 8 specifically.
Okay, I'll
All
wait.
right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's move on. OED Director Flynn, I believe the floor is yours, sir. If you could introduce your team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, President Congo and members of City Council. Nice to be with you this afternoon to present our FY23 budget and talk about our products and services. I'm joined to my left by Sean Park, the Deputy Director of Economic Development, and Mr. James Williams, our Manager of Small Minority Business Development. May I ask WITN to forward the first slide? Thank you. So we're sharing with you our departmental vision. This is our mission statement. It broadly defines our role to drive commerce and increase the quality of life for City of Wilmington residents, employees, and visitors. Our top priorities, and thank you. As we go through tonight's presentation, I hope you'll find examples that support this vision in our day-to-day work. The next slide, these are our top priorities. Creating and retaining permanent jobs, stimulating private sector investment. We do, second bullet point, we will successfully grow the tax base through new wage taxes, property taxes, and other fees. We like to grow or increase the productivity of our small businesses by increasing their access to capital, decreasing barriers to entry for small businesses. And then again, if we do all of these items, we'll increase the quality of life for everyone. Next slide, please. These are our top 3 performance measures, and we're going to present a number of slides across all the questions that will provide data and numbers that support not only these measures, but others. So if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the next question.
We can,
Okay.
OED,
This question,
OED Director Flynn, I just wanted to just take a moment, see if there's any questions. Members of council. Okay, I don't see anything. Oh, Council Member Spadola, I see you, but you seem to be on the public side. So I'm not sure if WITN can work that out.
We've promoted him.
Okay. All right, I would like to recognize Council Member Spadola. Thank you. All right, Director Flynn, let's move right into it. Question number 1 is pertaining to hybrid work schedules and the impact on the city. Can you talk about that? And also I think the real key question I know we all have is the building vacancy rate. Where are we at now?
okay, there's really 4 parts to this question, and we've provided brief answers to all of them, including the one of interest. Let me quickly start with how our budget addresses an economic development strategy. First, the next slide, please. So first, let me just point out that we have an official economic development strategy. I would invite everybody in City Council to look at this document. It's up on our website, www.choosewilmingtonde.org. What you see here are the 5 underlying pillars discussed in this 100-page document. And as we go through this presentation, we'll have examples of each of these. And Mr. Chair, we've created 5 slides with specific examples of each of these 5 strategies. But in the interest of time, I would recommend we move right to the building vacancy and hybrid
please.
slides.
Yes.
And if you'd like, we can always come back to these slides. So WITN, may I suggest slide 15, please? Perfect. Great. I'm going to turn it over to Sean Park to talk about workforce trends as a result of the COVID issue.
Thank you, Director Flynn, Mr. Chair, and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sean Park. I'm the Deputy Director for the Office of Economic Development. And regarding this question on the workforce trends that have evolved during the pandemic, I think all cities are learning how to deal with this change in workforce demand. You could go back to the previous slide, WITN. Yes. We're still learning on how other cities are responding, and we've also relied on the economic development community for research. I've posted here a picture of one study that did a survey of 1,000 workforce that moved during the pandemic and found out the reasons why they decided to move. And a big factor, the number one factor that was mentioned, was quality of life and cost of living. And this pertains to all of the amenities that a city offers, the accessibility, the restaurants, the entertainment, safety, schools, a place where people want to live when they can foreseeably live anywhere in this hybrid work environment and work from home environment. And the way that the talent discovers or forms their impressions of different cities is primarily online. And this was a change that happened during the pandemic, where this is a study that's done every year, but for the first time, a person's firsthand experience of a city is no longer the primary impression driver for talent that decides to move for various reasons. And as a city, I think what we're focusing on to respond to this change in work trends is, one, making sure we have an inventory of available units for talent to occupy the city. And so this is exemplified, I think, in Wilmington by the transition from office space to residential conversions. Examples of this include 901 North Market Street, as well as the Lincoln Square office to residential conversion. And the study also found that there is an increased demand for co-working spaces and hybrid work environments, but actually the top preferred work environment is still in office full-time. And for that reason, I think we're still pursuing to open jobs in all sectors, and we learn as we go for how to deal with this hybrid workforce. Can we move on to the next slide, please? And this is a slide that addresses the office vacancy question. I'll start off at the top by noting that that the office vacancy rate has been relatively stable since 2019 at 26%. This is relatively consistent with the Philadelphia submarket, and Wilmington Central Business District is highlighted in yellow in the chart to the right. But the main driver of the increase in office vacancy wasn't COVID, but it was the transition from 2018 through 2019. You can see here, year over year, in Q4 of 2018, the office vacancy rate was 17.7%, and then this jumped up to 26.3% which was largely caused by the move out of the Bank of America building. And although there's this perception out there that office vacancy has increased during the pandemic, the numbers, according to CBRE and other office and commercial space studies, show that this rate has been relatively stable.
Mr. Park, I'm just looking at the graph. You know, Wilmington's #3 in the market in terms of highest vacancy rates. I mean, what's happening here compared to, say, University City or the main line? You know, what's going on? Do we just have more space to start with? Or?
If you were to remove the Bank of America buildings from the numerator denominator, you would drop back down 17%. Essentially, you would pull 750,000 square feet out of the math and would put us almost even with the blue line, which is Newcastle County. Now, I think too, be careful about comparing us or any city to University City, which is one of the hottest real estate markets in the country, given very strong focus on pharmaceutical and medical technology.
Okay.
So we did have, going into the pandemic, you can see 2018, 19, 17%. But notice how that's about even with Newcastle County today.
Okay.
So we've been challenged. We've been challenged with office vacancy. It's not always easy to compete with the suburbs, where in the past 5 years, there's been a number of new office buildings built with free parking. And we have some tools that we can offer to address that. But much of our effort is focused on converting a few Class C office buildings to residential. So, for instance, conversion of the vacant office building in the 1400 block of Market Street to the Marriott Residence Inn was the start of our work in that area. Just south of there, 1200 Market Street, currently being converted to a new hotel. And then moving to the 900 block of Market, 901 is about 80% complete for a conversion from Class C office to 60 new residential units. So when that project finishes, CBRE will readjust its office vacancy rate. But honestly, until we can address the Bank of America buildings, the former MBNA buildings, they will weigh heavily on the ratio.
Okay.
So I hope that answers your question.
And as a quick follow-up, how do you know off the top of your head what the percentage of Class A real estate in Wilmington is?
Don't know off the top of my head, but we have a full presentation about office vacancy that we can share with you that breaks down those numbers and goes into more detail about the causes and the solutions. We'd be delighted to give that, present that to your committee.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I think we should put on the agenda in the future. I know we're limited on time here, but of course, from council's position, we're here to help. So whatever we can do to make sure we don't have the high rates, we're here. All right, let's turn it to
appreciate that.
Councilmember Oliver. Your question?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I didn't ever hear him really answer your question, I mean, I heard some stats and some other things about office space, but I thought your question was, are you stating that he identified all the empty office space, and then we went into a whole nother thing. So I didn't hear your question answered. Did you get your answer with that? Did you get your answer, Chris? I didn't. I mean, did I miss something?
I think, and I don't know if Director Flynn, I think he gave his explanation. Again, we're going to have to fully talk about this in, I think, a future Finance Committee meeting.
Well, could you repeat? Could you repeat your question, please?
We just wanted to know as why we're one of the highest in the region, and I think the answer. And again, I don't want to play words here.
Because with the Bank of America.
Yes, is that correct, Mr. Flynn?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. May I have a follow up?
Yes. Yes, please.
No, I heard him mention about the parking spaces down, in various places in the suburbs. I know a lot of different offices have went to Newark because of the parking problem. So we could talk about this another time, but are we trying to address that with the parking space? And is that why everybody's, I think that is one of the reasons that people are leaving. And I don't see where that parking space is being addressed. When I look around, it's just more office buildings or hotels, which will generate revenue. But I think that's a great thing. But I think we need to consider some of this parking space, because I know several people who have relocated down to Newark, and most of their issues was about parking. So I think that should be something that should be discussed. Secondly, Chris, Mr. Chair, when you asked about the number of Class A real estate, I would like for someone to send that to Marshall so we could just see, even I know it's probably going to come up a little bit in the slide, but I would like to just see specifically the Class A real estate that has been addressed and just sent to Marshall without everything in it.
We'll be happy to send that presentation tomorrow.
Okay, or just the numbers. I think he just asked for the numbers, not the presentation regarding Class A real estate. So I don't need a presentation. If we just have the numbers to send over, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Director Flynn, let's turn to, unless there's more questions on this specific matter, question one, let's turn to question two. To talk about the revenue generated by OED and what it's looked like over the past few years in terms of new business infusion.
Sure. Two slides. Two more. Yes. So here's the question two. And in order to answer this, let's advance one slide. In order to capture the amounts of revenue generated, there's different levers that we can pull. So one that we have direct oversight over is our strategic fund. And we work with the Department of Finance to provide the business information to that department to give us a report on the wage tax revenue generated by strategic fund businesses. And in 2021, this wage tax collected was a little over $10 million. And over the lifetime of the strategic fund, which started in 2002, the wage tax revenue generated from strategic fund businesses was $127,550,953. But this is only one way to capture the wage tax, to capture the revenue generated from our office. If you go to the next slide. So this is a snapshot of our dashboard, and it's our office's internal tracking of the economic development activity throughout the city. I'll start at the top under private investment and first reference the sources that feed into these numbers. in addition to our products and services, including the strategic fund, we also rely on the Downtown Development District and partners such as Trexas Capital, Wedco, NDC, the Delaware Prosperity Partnership, in addition to our own research on local media sources on new developments that occur throughout the city. So Delaware Business Times, News Journal, WDEL, to come up with these numbers. So the number in green, the 553 million, is our accounting of the total number of private investment that's currently in development or recently completed in 2021. And these aren't all OED projects, but we were able to separate the OED projects private investment number and calculate a one-time construction wage tax that's generated from the construction activity that our office incentivizes. So that one-time construction wage tax number is a little over $2 million. And if we go down to the left, residential and commercial, this is our accounting of the number of residential units in development and commercial and office space in development. And you'll see there 953 market rate residential units, 357 non-market rates, and 465,000 commercial and office space. And this translates into, when these projects go online, this translates into additional permit fees, additional property tax, and additional revenue for the city. And then the last component of this slide I'll touch is the employment figures. So we tracked a little over 1,300 jobs that were announced in 2021. And of this amount, 956 were jobs that our office has somewhat touched. It could be a strategic fund agreement or technical assistance. But these are jobs that will contribute additional wage tax revenue once they begin to hire, and which will translate into more revenue for the city.
Mr. Parks, I believe Councilmember Oliver has her hand raised. The floor is yours. You're on mute. Okay.
I had a question regarding, you said the first was the private investments, and that was our revenue from private investments?
No, that's not the.
But you were just showing there's something wrong with my, I'm having a little problem, difficulty hearing over here. But this right here is showing the private investments, and up top, the other one is the one-time construction wage estimate. Okay, I got you.
Right. So the private investment, Councilwoman, the private investment dollar figure is not the wage tax or the tax revenue to the city.
Right.
That's just our total accounting of the private investment dollars that that developers and other businesses invest into the city. And we've created our best attempt to capture the wage tax from construction fees that will follow from our office's activity.
Thank you. I was gonna say, I knew they didn't wait, but I got it. Like I said, I'm having a little problems over here, so I don't, if you hear me keep it, maybe ask a question the second time, is because over here my volume is, I'm having a little issues. Okay, I'm okay with that. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Gray, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know, is House Bill 358 going to have any impact on your revenue coming in? The state's transfer tax, they're discussing reducing it.
That'll be addressed in either the finance presentation. The question you're asking is, what impact would a change to the state's real estate transfer tax policy have on the city of Wilmington? That is not an economic development issue.
Oh, I thought it might affect you because you were, I'm sorry, I thought it might affect you because you were discussing residential and commercial development and transfer or sale of them. Okay. So it won't affect your budget, your revenue source.
That's not an activity that we impact. The city benefits when any piece of real estate is sold from one party to another. City benefits. The finance presentation will possibly communicate that. It's also available from the budget office as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. All right, Director Flynn, I believe we're now ready to move on. Did you already finish up 2A? Did you touch on that already?
Mr. Park would like to share this if you're interested.
Okay.
This is another answer to the question that was asked.
Right. So 2A asks for the number of new businesses to the city. This number is a little bit difficult to estimate, but I've approached it using number one, Ptolemy, to account for the active business licenses in the city. Now, there's a lot of noise in this data, but we can see here the trend from 2019 through 2021 on the number of active business licenses that were accounted for. This doesn't mean that these are new businesses or that these aren't reapplicants, but this is what the data shows. We also refer to our internal tracking numbers, and from 2019 through 2021, we were able to track 241 businesses, over 2,200 new jobs announced. OED was involved in 185 projects and 60 agreements. And in terms of the new businesses that we tracked using media sources and our own programs, we tracked 37 new businesses in 2019 to 31 in 2020 and 27 in 2021. Now, keep in mind, these are new businesses that are big enough to make the media, get media coverage, and bring new jobs to the city. And so this number might be relatively low, but it's numbers that we can account for.
And to add on to what Mr. Park said, those businesses are ones that we have provided a product or service to. They're businesses we've worked with. Right. As opposed to the licenses that are some are pulled that they don't necessarily work with us.
All right.
So we hope this data is of use, and at any time, anybody from council, city council, we invite you to come in and we can go into a little more detail about what these numbers mean.
Got it. Councilmember Oliver, and then Councilmember Spadola after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for Mr. James. I'd like to know how many of them jobs have are DBEs.
We're going to
the projects, James, or either the agreements.
Well, let's just.
We're going to get to that later in the presentation.
Okay.
That's
No
question
worries.
number 8.
No worries. Okay.
All right. Any questions for actually Councilmember Spadola?
Thank you. Director Flynn, I was pleased to hear the study that your colleagues went over in the beginning, basically doing a post-mortem on why a business left the city. I'm curious, how are you refining your internal tracking procedures? Because now the threat, we're not just competing with other cities, we're also competing with companies making sure they get their employees to come into the city and not work from home. So how are you handling the work from home push in that regard?
You know, this is a great question. Mayor, myself, the chief of staff, members on city council, we're all in touch with all the business leaders we know. So we, in some cases, have direct conversations particularly with large employers, so we know which employers are coming back and when, and to what schedule. So that's how we understand which of our customers are back now, which ones might be coming back.
1930.
If your question is, what control do we have over that? At the moment, we don't, and may not need to. I think that we all want more of our workers downtown at the riverfront in our neighborhoods using our amenities. So we're excited to see that when we look at the number of cars parked downtown, which might be the single best way to measure the activity that we're talking about, we've seen a significant increase this year based on the Wilmington Parking Authority's data to our office.
Thank you.
We'd be happy to talk more about it.
Yes.
Our office.
Yes, and just kind of on that subject of back to work, let's talk about question number 3. Okay, if we can specify the COVID response direct support payment, specifically identifying if any of them are any DBEs.
Yes, so we're going to answer this question first by showing you this question was presented to us last year. WITN, if you move to the next slide, please. We wanted to show council, if you recall, this graphic is how we laid out all the different resources generated by the CARES Act as it flowed from the federal agencies through the state agencies, private activity, and then to the city. What we're going to do now is we're going to use this same approach to give you an update. So if you go to the next slide, WITN, what this slide shows is that the U.S. CARES Act funding, which was a type of COVID resource, has petered out and ended, which is what the red indicates. And taking its place under the COVID resources banner is ARPA. ARPA, of course, as everybody on council knows from its work with the administration, is just getting started. And you'll see these green circles. It just indicate that this is what we're moving forward with and what we've done. First column, on behalf of the state, we administered a parking garage relief program for eligible parking garages that were not able to receive COVID assistance through the U.S. CARES Act the previous 2 years, but which bore a large impact, the fact that nobody was parking in them. So the state allowed the city of Wilmington to administer this program, which we successfully did, and helped stabilize many of the parking garages. Second column, to your question, small businesses. James Williams is going to talk in more detail about all of our small business and minority business activity. Just to answer the question, from ARPA alone, you can see the numbers below. 12 businesses so far, 86,000, 90% MBE. Next, the disparity study, which you'll also be receiving an update on shortly, funded through ARPA. Continuing on to the right, Curbside Wilmington program. We served 35 businesses at $61,000, 1/3 of which were minority owned. We're going to talk a little bit more about that program and what it looks like moving forward, but the reason for the drop in our budget associated with this is because the last 2 years, City Council and the UDAG Corporation supported the manufacture and production of all of the fencing. We plan to reuse that for this season. That concludes my answer.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Director Flynn, moving back along, can you discuss the funding available from the strategic fund? Realizing that, last fiscal year, council passed an infusion of $1.25 million. And you talk about what effect that infusion had.
All right. Can we move on to the next? Yep. So this slide here shows the number of infusions since the inception of the program in 2002. There was 7 rounds of infusion. The latest one in 2021 for $1.2 million and $250,000 in the minority business set aside. The total funding to date was $17.36 million. Next slide, please. Here is our fund balance as it stands in April of 2022. The fund balance is $1,866,110. We have contractual commitments that are multi-year, and there's 6 in total, which bring us to $1,175,000. Bringing us to a subtotal of $691,110. And we have 5 pipeline commitments, which are agreements that will soon be signed but have not been signed yet, totaling $80,000. And this brings our total funds available to $611,110. Slide, please.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilmember.
Could you go back
Oliver,
to?
yes.
I mentioned this the last time, like I can see the question on it, but over here to the right, I'm not able to see that. It's not in here. I think I mentioned this before. I guess in the future, if we can move a lot more to the left so we can get the full presentation, because I can see the economic development strategy funds. I see all of that. But when it gets over here to the amounts, we're not able to see it. And I thought someone else on council mentioned that before, if we can make sure everything is more or less over by way, question AB, because it cuts off when now we see everybody's faces. So I'm not able to see the rest of it. I mean, it's nothing we can do about it, not just making a suggestion. Okay.
So noted.
Mr. Chair, are you able to see these figures?
Yeah, yes, I'm able to see it on the screen.
That the people looking at the screen, nobody else can see it besides you.
No, I can see them too. I can see all the numbers.
I can't see.
Excuse me, as a point of order, we will address any issues with WITN. Please message them directly and they can potentially work with you. Okay. All right. So, all right. If there's no more questions on 4, we're running a little short on time. So, can you just talk about, just briefly, Director Flynn, before we move to 5, the amount to minority-owned businesses? I believe I see a figure of $318,000.
Right. So this figure is from fiscal year 20 through 22. The funding invested in minority-owned businesses is $318,844. Mr. Williams has a slide in question 7 that breaks down the businesses and the minority business set-aside amounts. So that'll be covered in more detail for question 7. But the last point here is fiscal year 2020 through 2022. The amount of funding allocated to small businesses is also $567,107.
Okay. All right. Now let's turn to question 5. You discussed approximately $110,000 for consultants.
Okay, can we, yep. So the total amounts of consultants budget proposed is $95,000 for architecture, engineering, marketing, communications, and we want to be ready to respond to opportunities when it comes to applying for grants, potential redevelopment opportunities, and potential marketing, which is part of the small and minority business education program. Could we move on to the next slide? And here are some examples of these uses. The grants that I mentioned, we utilize eConsult solutions to win the city infrastructure funding, $17 million in federal grants through the RAISE grant, and $4.7 million through the TIF grant, which is a state fund. Marketing opportunities are King Creative, Golden Shovel, Influencers Lab Media, and the studies to explore potential redevelopment opportunities are the appraisal services, WRA, BSA Architecture, Design Collaborative, and Homesy Architects.
All right. Now turning to question 6, the approximately $30K budgeted for grants.
Right. Next slide, please. So grants to agencies, we have 2 reoccurring, the Greater Wilmington Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is the destination marketing organization, and Truex's Capital at $10,000, which is an important partner for our small businesses and minority-owned businesses in the community. Donation and community services, Director Flynn noted the cost for fencing for Curbside Wilmington decreased, and we have $5,000 in there for fence maintenance, and the other donation and community services expenses have stayed flat.
There was a question, sub-question involved in this number 6 about the Delaware Black Chamber of Commerce, and I just want to let you know that we supported that organization last year by purchasing memberships. Several businesses in the city that wanted to become members of the organization, and additionally this year they'll be receiving a large grant of $30,000. It's not from our budget line, but we're administering it.
Okay.
That concludes the answer to question 6.
Perfect. All right. Moving right along.
No, I had a.
Oh, sorry, council member. Floor is yours. Looks like you're on mute. Councilmember Oliver.
Go back to question 6. Could you? Nope. Go back. The one just before the slide before. Yeah. Where is Greater Wilmington Convention Visitors Bureau? I just want to know if it's still the same. Where is that located now?
They're located in the Community Services Building.
Right. Are they? I mean, they're never in there. We had some people here last 2. I mean, are they currently open?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
All right. Let's turn to question 7 again. Director Flynn, can you talk about the Minority Business Development Plan and what the fund balance is, and then what the future looks like?
The next 7 or 10 slides are going to give everyone a great overview of all of our small business activity. Mr. Williams is going to present this data, and recall that we present, the question's been asked in 2 parts. One generally about our small minority business development, and then a second question about our MBE activity, which is related directly to the city budget and spend. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Williams.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me. Again, James Williams. I am the Small and Minority Business Development Manager here in the Office of Economic Development. If you could go back one more slide, please. All right, so this slide basically covers the set-aside amount in our strategic fund. We're in a fortunate position. The past 2 years, we've had 2 infusions, which have brought our set-aside amount up to $425,000, almost $426,000. It's important to note that we work with partners such as True Actors Capital to get referrals for businesses that could use additional funding on top of some of the loan products that they offer to some of our small and minority businesses here in the city. But it's also important to note that considering this amount of funds that we have available, I'd like to welcome council members and folks to refer businesses to our office that we can work with them to help overcome any business challenges that they may have. In addition to the set aside and the funds that we have available from our strategic funds, we've also been able to leverage some of the ARPA dollars to strengthen the amount of support that we can provide to small businesses in the community, and we'll spend a moment talking about that when we get to slide or so. Next slide, please. All right, so question 7 asks us to specify the funds budgeted to market and promote our small and minority business development program. Just to differentiate, we have the minority business development, but then we also have the disadvantaged business enterprise program, which I'll speak about in question 7. So regarding small businesses that aren't necessarily interested in doing business with the city, which would be DBEs, we have in our small minority business enterprise office budget $21,800, which is part of our operating budget. We have this money available to use for consultants, advertising, rentals for halls to conduct events and such. Obviously, throughout the pandemic, meeting in person was a challenge. But since I've joined this role, we've come up with a few things we'd like to kick off in the next coming months, which would help to utilize some of this budget. One event I'd like to highlight is on May 10th. We are working to host a minority-owned small business fair here at the city facility, where we're looking to invite small minority-owned businesses to come to the city of Wilmington to learn about some of our partner organizations, including members from DELDOT, learning about organizations such as the state's Office of Purchasing, small business office, etc. So this will be modeled after an event that we recently did for which is more aligned to the DBE community, which I'll speak about in question 8. Then we intend to follow this May 10th event up with another event in the fall, which will be a little bit more formal, where we'll look to create some opportunities for minority-owned businesses by inviting some of the large business members of our community, again, to come to a facility that we'll rent and basically facilitate networking and create some opportunities in that way. Another planned expenditure that we are working on is to hire a marketing consultant to help market not only our small business programs, but also our DBE program. So that's in the works with a local consultant that we hope to utilize. And lastly, we have our OED website, which I know has been mentioned a couple of times, where we have some of the products and some of the tools that are available to our small business community that we offer here through the office.
Mr. Williams, unfortunately, we are running a little short on time. So if you could move forward to the, and again, for the public, the slides will be online in full. So any questions, please go to the wilmdebudget.org site, and the answers will be there in full. I want to move to just a list of businesses. Would you mind moving to that? Is there anything you have any insight on?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are all the small businesses that I supported since joining the city back in June. Anything from phone calls from businesses who are looking to acquire a storefront or a site for startup businesses, to helping businesses navigate city offices such as licensing and inspections or the fire department, you name it. Just supporting businesses in a multitude of ways. A couple of businesses that I'd like to highlight. One being Apex Lounge, which opened up over on Orange Street. Our office worked with them to submit the Downtown Development District application, but then also We provided some consultant work with them through BSA and A to help improve the facade of the building, which we're still in process and working with the owner there. That owner invested a large amount of money in that building, which had been unoccupied for almost 20 years, I believe. So we're being as supportive as we can of that small and minority-owned business. Additionally,
Mr. Williams, just a quick question on that list. It may be asked is, I guess, what the definition of small business is, because I see, like, I don't want to call out an individual business, but for example, there's like Big Fish Grill and Whiting Turner Partners, and Whiting Turner's an internet, like a pretty well-known big company. So do you know the definition?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so WP Partners is actually right. It's not Whiting Turner. It's a small minority-owned developer who actually purchased the building on the corner of Orange and 10th Street.
Oh, okay.
So they own the cleaning and the slider shop there, as well as the residential units above them, which they developed and our office supported in a fairly major way to help that happen. So just to differentiate that. Now, in terms of the Big Fish Group, so yeah, you are correct. That is a fairly large group. Now, I supported that business with a reimbursement for some paving that they had done on the street between, they own the block that's basically Mickey Moto's, Washington Street Ale House, and now Torber Street. So the Torber Street paving, which we called it. So I supported that business in that way. It maybe doesn't fit under the realm of small business support, but it was a project that I was involved in with this office, so that's why it's on the list.
Okay. All right, and I want to move to some questions briefly. Council President Congo first.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if your question, if it was answered about what's the definition of a minority business, and also.
Federal Economic Development Administration defines a small business as 500 employees or fewer. We do not necessarily define it that way. If we were to look at
how do we define it?
Any business that has between 1 and 50 employees. We'll work. I think, as you know, President, we work with any business. We don't have a cutoff. We don't say, okay, if you have fewer than 5 employees, we won't work with you. We work with people who are single, one person who comes into our office and has an idea for a business that hasn't even started a business yet, all the way up to businesses with 50, 60, 70 employees. I'd say the majority of businesses on that list, if we were to do an average, hey, James, probably 10.
Yeah, no more than 10.
That's an average.
Okay. I have some follow-up questions, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. So I need the Big Fish Group explained a little bit in more detail. I'm not sure how they qualified. All power to them, but they seem to be extremely successful. The parking lot is always full. The restaurants are always full. I'm not sure how they qualified as a minority or small business. That's one question. Another question is, how many of these businesses that are listed are specifically Black or Hispanic owned? And then the final question is, I know you said you were hiring a consultant to help promote and advertise this department. Do we know who that consultant is going to be, and are they Black or brown?
We're interested in working with Influencers Lab Media. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Number 2, Councilwoman Harley approached our office with a request for assistance. There's a public road that runs between restaurants that are owned and managed by Big Fish. That road it's owned by the city and was not in the budget to be paved by the city, but yet it had a number of issues leading to people's cars being damaged from potholes. At that moment, Council President, that business had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into the restaurants and the site work, creating new parking, which kept the cars out of the local community. I think you've probably driven by and seen that work.
Yes.
So Councilwoman Harley asked us to figure out a way to get that road paved sooner rather than later.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. What was the third question?
How many of the businesses on here are specifically Black or Hispanic owned?
We'll get to that in a moment. Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
shall we move on?
I do have, again, we are running short on time, everyone, but we briefly, one question each. Okay, Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate my support for the Office of Economic Development for working with businesses of all sizes. You know, whether a company has 5 employees or 500, that wage tax is more important than ever for the city. So please continue to support restaurants, no matter how big or small. You know, that brings a lot of people to town, and maybe one day we'll have some Steven Star restaurants in Wilmington. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. When you say these small businesses on the list are supported, exactly what does that mean when you say supported? I know we have done walkthroughs on North Market Street and different parts of 2nd District, and I finally on your list see some 2nd District businesses like David Wilford at 2500 North Market Street, and also Done Right Cleaners that's in my district. I know we're in talks about them getting support. So what do you mean when you say small businesses are supported?
Absolutely. So this is just a list of all the interactions that I've had, things that are in the pipeline, things that we've provided.
Right.
We provided support to. These are all the interactions. So it could be a phone call, you know, for someone who needs some support with,
Serious.
you know, perhaps.
Councilmember, sorry about that. Just let's try to keep comments to a minimum. All right.
That wasn't me. That was
no. I didn't say it was you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Floor is yours, Councilmember Darby.
Yes. No, I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to understand that because I know they haven't received that much support yet. But I know it's in the talks from our walkthroughs that we did. So I just wanted to understand what supported meant. So it's just interactions of any type.
These are the businesses that I've been in touch with, that I've helped in some way. As you mentioned, the 2 that are in your district, which would be Done Right Cleaners, just waiting for them to return their tax returns with me to me, and to also provide the quote from the sign company that we're working to help support some new signage over there. In terms of 2501 North Market Street, we're waiting to work with the owner there. He said he'll reach out to us when he's ready to move forward with the sidewalks and tree planting that we agreed to help that project out with. So it's any number of things. I was just trying to show the number of and there's probably some that, you know, honestly, I didn't even count here that were so minor, but I just was trying to show all the different businesses we've touched from this office, from this role.
And I think we now have a count of the number of businesses that are Black and brown.
Yeah, if I just did a quick count here, I believe it's 43 businesses listed here. 7 of these are not Black or brown owned.
And just can I follow up with one thing? I don't know if we have just a quick thing. We probably don't have the answer right now, but if you could break these down by district, because I'm also curious about that and how small businesses are being supported by district.
At this point, and Ukraine continues to.
Who's off mute?
Okay. I don't know if you heard it, Mr. Williams, but Councilmember Darby does want to break it down by district, and I actually second that request. That's a fair request, so we can figure out how we can better steer businesses to OED. All right.
We'll be happy to provide that, Mr. Chair, but just to be very clear, we help any and every business in the city. Doesn't matter what district they're in.
All right.
It's by chance where they land and which ones are able to work with us, are interested in working with us.
Okay,
And
all right.
If it's
All right.
okay, I'd also like to add that, we welcome, all the council members to do, walkthroughs of their district. We had a recent one with Councilmember Darby, which I thought went very well, provided a lot of good insights into some of the small businesses in her district. We had a couple others that were scheduled, but didn't come through. So now that the weather's getting nice, especially, I'd love to get out into some of your districts and meet some of the business owners.
Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you. Thank you,
floor
Mr.
is yours.
Chair. I wanted to just make a statement. I think that something was misunderstood. I think Councilwoman Darby was just talking about the list right here to be broken down into districts, not every business that y'all work with. What my statement was going to be is that I think this list is very misleading until someone, I think Mr. Chair brought up a question for Mr. Williams to say this is all the businesses that I have been in touch with or have made some type of contact with. I thought we were looking at small, not saying you were not supporting them, but this kind of misleading. I thought it would just be a list of businesses we're talking about tonight who have the Office of Economic Development has did some finances with, not just walk by and had a conversation with them or someone has given them a card. So this list is very misleading. So I too echo a breakdown of just this list and the districts that it represent. And also, I like to clear up something. This is council's only time to ask departments questions. So it's not for anyone to be offended about anything. This is the budget. This is our only time to ask a few questions, and I don't think anyone should take this personal. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we're delighted to be here tonight, and we will break down this list. I just want to be very clear. There are several businesses on this list that we provided financial support to. And when we say we support it, it's not just walking by and giving a card. We listed all those businesses, it would be twice as long. And this is not your only time to ask questions. We schedule appointments with every council member, and each one of you will be receiving an invitation to come into this office and work with us, learn more about what we do, as well as going out into the district on walkthroughs. So we look forward to that, and we'll follow up with answers to all your questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, my hand was up.
Excuse me, I'm just following up.
I've got, one more question.
Mr.
We are
Chair,
limited on time, so one more
Mr.
question.
Chair, this is the budget hearing. I'm just following up to what Mr. Williams said. Some of the places here, he stopped by and just had a conversation. There again, I don't think this is the time for any department to take this personal. We're just asking questions and just following up. It's just a conversation. So if somebody takes it the wrong way or they're thin skinned, it makes no sense to me. I just heard Mr. Williams said some of the businesses he just stopped by may have had a conversation. And I just said the list is a little misleading based on what Mr. Williams said. And that was all that was. I think the Office of Economic Development do a good job. They've been very helpful to me. This is the budget hearing. I did not mean this is the only time that we get to ask questions. I was only saying this is the budget hearing. So this is the time for all council members, if they have a question, to ask a question. I didn't mean it in that context. So that wasn't what I meant. Once again, I don't hope any departments take this personal. It's just a time to ask questions. My gosh.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Councilmember Fields.
Yes, I just wanted to make a brief comment. I wanted to let the office know that we had scheduled some appointments, and we had to reschedule. But I thank them for taking the opportunity to keep reaching out to me and keep scheduling and find out what's best for me and what day. And they had already mapped out the places that we were going to go. So I will be calling your office next week, but I just want to say thank you for taking your time to do that for me, knowing that I was going to go out. So I'll be in touch next week. I just want to say thank you for doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. I just want to say, I don't think the list is misleading at all. I think, I don't think the Office of Economic Development should just be throwing money at business. The more they can provide pro bono consulting and support, as James mentioned, the less taxpayer money we need to keep these businesses sustainable. So the more they can provide advice and wisdom and that they don't need money, I think that's even better. Thank you.
All right. Considering where we're at time-wise, if you could begin briefly, Director Flynn, discuss any highlights with question number 8. Because I know we've discussed DBs a lot, and most likely we'll have to have a separate session at a Finance Committee meeting to discuss the program and where we're going. But if you could, for the purposes of tonight, just briefly go over question 8.
I'll answer question number 8, if that's okay with everybody,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, that's fine.
So yeah, as I discussed, for the $21,000 we have in the SMBEO budget also applies for any activities that we partake in for the DBE community. 2 events I want to highlight that we have done recently. One was an event that I attended in Councilmember Oliver's district, where she gathered many of the DBEs that turned out that night to learn about some of the ARPA-funded projects. So that was a good start for us to kind of introduce myself, and I was able to form a lot of good relationships with some of our DBE contractors who are interested in doing ARPA projects. So thank you for coordinating that, Council Member. Secondly, March 7th, we, along with some members from Real Estate and Housing and some members from the Mayor's Office, conducted a meet and greet event over at the William Hicks Anderson Center, where we invited all the DBEs who are interested in learning about ARPA-funded projects that some of our city's partner organizations had underway and had received funding from. So this event created a number of opportunities for our DBE community. Pretty much every day the past, I'd say at least 2 weeks, I've been getting DBE applicants either come to the office or sending in DBE packs and telling me that they were actually able to acquire house projects, rehabilitation projects, things of that nature because of that event. So I think that it was a great success, and a lot of people helped to make that come together. So those are 2 of the examples of how we have been marketing the DBE program. Additionally to my normal responsibilities for attending pre-bid meetings, where I go over the DBE program with the potential bidders, explain the rules of the program, and promote the program and ask bidders to refer DBE, the potential DBE subcontractors or even prime contractors to our office so we can get them registered. If you can move forward one more slide, I can show you that. Actually, one more slide, please. All right. So in our database, we currently have 108 DBEs certified. I think when I began, the number was somewhere around 170 odd. We've done 24 new DBEs and recertifications, I'd say within the past year. If you can fast forward one more slide, please. We're short on time. Okay, these are the events that I was referring to, the meet and greet, as well as the ARPA news and events, which again, with the help of Real Estate and Housing, I circulate on a weekly basis, any opportunities that are available through the ARPA program, whether it's our partner organizations or any other opportunities that the DBE community may be aware of. In addition to attendees from that event that we have on a separate list, so we've got roughly 150, I think, contacts that these newsletters go out to each week. So we've gotten really good feedback from these that people are really getting some benefit out of these programs.
Okay.
So I think that covers it for section 8. And if there are any questions.
All right. With that, I think 9 and 10 are self-explanatory. We can, the public can view those again on the Wilmington budget, debudget.org website. All right. And then just lastly, do you have any proposed suggestions for council for a 2% reduction to your department
The only line in our budget that's large enough to take anything out of would be our consulting line or our advertising line.
Okay.
Our
Great.
budget's comprised mostly of debt service. And
Okay.
as you've seen, every year we give, we just happen to administer out of our office grant to the Wilmington Convention and Visitors Bureau, and of course the Van Hampton's organization, True Access Capital, which is an organization we work with on a weekly basis. So we couldn't cut anything from there, probably consultants or advertising.
That's fair enough. All right, and Councilmember Oliver, believe you have a question?
No, I'm going to just make a statement. I really appreciate what the Office of Economic Development has assisted me with in the 3rd District. Jeff, you know, you've been outstanding to me. I don't know why when we get on these budget hearings, things change up. Sean, you've done great work with finding some funding, and James, words can't explain how you have really been very instrumental in trying to get out in the public. And I hear a lot of good things about you taking the initiative to trying to speak to some of our small businesses, especially at the laundromat on Governor Prince. The guy over there really speaks highly of you. So I'd just like to thank your office for doing a great job. Bye-bye.
All right. I'm going to flip it to the public real quick if there's any comments or questions by members of the public. All right. Seeing none, turn it back to council if there's any final comments or questions by council. All right. Seeing none, at this time, I'd like to thank OED Director Flynn, Deputy Director Sean Parks, also Small Business Director, Mr. Williams, and also Mr. Winkler from OMB for presenting this evening. Any follow-up information, as always, you can send it to the attention of Ms. Marshall Bassling from City Council. This time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Much. We appreciate your support.
All right, thank you very much, Director Flynn. And we're a little bit behind schedule, so we're going to start the HR presentation at 6:45 p.m. Good evening, honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. This time I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee budget hearing for Human Resources Department. First, I'd like to start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee here in attendance this evening by doing roll call. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District. At large, Councilmember Walsh. Councilmember Spadola at large.
Present.
Council President Congo.
Here.
This time I'd like to also recognize other council persons in attendance by doing a roll call. Councilmember Gray, 1st District.
Present.
Councilmember Darby, 2nd District. Councilmember Fields, 5th District. Councilmember McCoy, 6th District.
Here.
Councilmember Cabrera at large. Councilmember Mills at large.
Present.
Like the first.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm here. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Fields. I would like to also inform everyone that public comments will be asked at the end of this department budget hearing, and we look forward to engagement from the public. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. If there's any follow-up information during the budget hearings, Ms. Marshall Bassnight will track and follow up on those requests. I ask that my colleagues have any questions, as always, use the raise hand feature so we don't talk over each other. And now at this time, I turn it over to Mr. Wilmeyer, who's from the Office of Management and Budget, for a financial overview, followed by then a brief introduction and a question and answer by HR Director Charlotte Barnes. The floor is yours, Mr. Wilmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of City Council. During this time, we will review the major funding changes within the Human Resources Department's proposed budget for the fiscal year 2023. Overall, the department's general fund budget increased by $39,000 or 1.7%. Personal services increased by roughly $44,000 or 2.4%. MS&E or material supplies and equipment decreased by $10,000 or 2.3%. And the level of staffing remains the same as last year. Next slide, please. Highlighting the major funding changes in the general fund are the following. Regarding staffing, personal services rose by $44,000. This increase includes the movement of 3 HR administrators from the E&M classification system to the non-union classification system at grade T for a total cost of $10,000. Regarding MS&E, there was a net decrease of $10,000, with the primary contribution being a $15,000 reduction in miscellaneous charges related to investigations. Next slide, please. Next, we will cover the internal services funds within the HR department, starting with the risk management fund. Overall, the budget increased around $440,000 or 11.2%. Personal services increased by $14,000 or 7.4%. MS&E increased by $425,000 or 11.4%. And staffing also remains at last year's level. Next slide, please. Highlighting the major changes in risk management, personal services increased by $14,000 as temporary salaries went up $11,000 as the risk manager is now split funded 67% risk management fund and 33% workers' compensation fund. Regarding liability, costs rose approximately $205,000 as excess general liability increased by $126,000 and cyber insurance had an increase of around $79,000. Additionally, spending for insurance claims legal defense went up $140,000 due to $50,000 in elevated spending for a Fair Labor Standards Administration case and $90,000 in additional funding needed for contingency items. Next slide, please. Reviewing the Workers' Compensation Fund, the overall budget increased by $511,000 or 10%. Personal Services had a decrease of around $14,000 or 2.5%. MS&E decreased by approximately $15,000 or 1.5%. And staffing is the same as last year as well. Next slide, please. Considering major funding changes in workers' compensation, Personal Services had a decrease of around $14,000 to include temporary salaries, which decreased $11,000 due to the risk manager position now being split funded 33% workers' compensation fund and 67% risk management fund. And this is the same, well, in comparison to last fiscal year, this position was equally split funded between the workers' compensation and risk management funds. In other lines, pension contributions decreased by approximately $17,000. The contract for the city's physician increased by $25,000. And self-insurance rose around $539,000 to match actuarially derived costs for the following. Medical is up about $93,000. Indemnity is up $155,000. And other is up $291,000. Next slide, please. And then wrapping up the internal services funds in the HR department is the health and welfare fund. Overall, the budget increased by just over $1.36 million or 6.6%. Personal services went up about $20,000 or 4.9%. MS&E had a decrease of around $105,000 or 29.6%. And staffing also is at the same level as last year. Next slide, please. All right, summarizing the major funding changes in health and welfare, personal services went up by about $20,000, which included the $6,000 cost of an upgrade for the employee benefits manager, who went from grade P, step 5 to grade T, step 1. For self-insurance, costs rose a net of approximately $1.44 million, as medical costs went up $1.38 million, stop loss went up around $143,000, dental went up around $81,000. Telehealth, which is a newly created account, went up $69,000 with funds transferred from consultants, and medical admin fees went down $130,000. In closing, for more information about the department's budget book, please reference page 127 of the book. And accordingly, we can discuss a question or two before we hand things over to Director Barnes and team.
All right. I don't see any questions, Mr. Waymeyer. So I'll now turn it over to Director Barnes. If you could introduce your team, and then we can jump into the presentation. You're on mute. Got it?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. After 2 years, I should know better.
No problem. The floor is yours, Director.
Good afternoon, President Congo, Chairman Johnson, honorable members of council assembled here, and council staff. Thank you for the opportunity to present the fiscal 23 proposed budget for the Department of Human Resources for your consideration. It is my privilege and honor to serve the city as the Director of Human Resources. This is my 8th time before you, and yes, I am still excited to lead the department during these rapidly changing times. When I was before you last year, we were still in the height of the pandemic, with the vast majority of the workforce still functioning exclusively remotely. Who knew at that time that today, more than 2 years later, we would still be dealing with COVID-19? Or that as recent as January, we would need to return to remote work during the surge of the Omicron variant. Despite the collective hope a few weeks ago that the pandemic had loosened its grip on the nation, we are yet hearing of another surge on the horizon. In addition to the responding to the ever-evolving impact of COVID-19, the department has had to pivot from electronic to manual processing of payroll due to a ransomware attack in December on the vendor who provides timekeeping and attendance software utilized by the city. We are still in the restoration and reconciliation phase of this project and owe a debt of gratitude, not only to the payroll representatives in the respective departments, but also, and perhaps more significantly, to the small but mighty team in HR who ensures that our 1,100 full-time and 150 temporary employees are paid timely. Out of sight does not mean out of mind, and the countless nights and weekends spent ensuring that employees are paid does not go unnoticed. You are appreciated. HR has been tested and at times on the ropes in many areas this fiscal year. We are battle-worn, but continue to function like the little engine that could. I am reminded of something my late grandmother used to say: what does not kill you will only make you stronger. I am confident that we as a department and as a city can and will be stronger. But in becoming stronger, as the flight attendant reminds us, you must put on your mask first before assisting others. As a department, we will be spending some time to focus on us. For a second year, I share with you that shifting priorities has delayed the plans for City University, a learning platform for the workforce, as well as the implementation of a new classification and compensation system. However, we have researched and are planning to pilot a new performance management system that will assist with managing both in-person and, when necessary, a hybrid workforce. We are diligently working to make the forward progress necessary to meet the city's need to attract and retain a high-quality workforce to meet the needs of the citizens we serve, as well as ensure a productive work environment for city employees. This includes updating outdated processes, documenting standard operating procedures, and improving operational efficiencies. The world of HR indeed continues to change. However, we will remain nimble and responsive to changes in the environment, while also working to continue the forward progress we've made in the areas of compliance, training, risk control, and healthcare. Before delving into the presentation and questions, I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the Human Resources Department's management team. They are Taylor West, Deputy Director, Wendy Stanford, Director of Employment Services, Bruno Battaglia, Occupational Health and Safety Program Manager, James Robb, Risk Manager, and Donnie Bougely Smith, the Employee Benefits Manager. I owe a debt of gratitude to them, along with the rest of the dedicated employees of the department who work hard every day to meet the needs of the city's workforce. I would also like to wish a happy retirement to my administrative assistant, Beth Copson, whose last day in the office is tomorrow. With your permission, I would like to begin responding to council's written questions.
Yes, Director. Thank you for that comprehensive overview. Yes, let's shift right to question one about the status of the city's CVAs.
Okay, thank you.
So good evening. Again, I'm Taylor West, the Deputy Director of HR, and I will be answering this first question. So approximately 75% of the city's workforce is unionized, and that is broken down across 6 bargaining units. You'll see on the chart on the slide before us, the contract terms for each contract. And notice that for the first time in quite some time, all of our current collective bargaining agreements are current. None of them are expired. You will notice if you take a look that 2 of them are due to expire on June 30th of this year. And we are awaiting dates actually from the union to have our first session to establish ground rules for that negotiations. And so we are happy to be at this place where all of our contracts are current. And I guess take any questions you have on this slide.
Be sure to mute everyone. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. I don't see any hands up, Ms. West, so we can move to question 2. And I know Director Barnes touched on it briefly. So if you could just highlight anything that wasn't discussed during the opening about the Chronos system.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendy Stanford, the Director of Employment Services. I'm going to talk about question 2. So we have a question here before us about operational efficiency in regards to the Chronos system being down. The Kronos system went down in December 2021 because of a ransomware attack, and we've been processing payments manually using timesheets while the Kronos software system has been down. The second question is about the financial impact of the Kronos system being down. The financial impact is roughly $9,500 year to date, and we're currently utilizing temporary support to restore the hours and accruals for the Kronos system. The third question is about the budgetary plans for a new time tracking system. At this time, we have no plans to switch from the Kronos software system because it's currently meeting all of our time tracking needs.
Is there a timeline when Kronos is expected to be back online, or?
I'll take that, Chairman Johnson. As we move through the restoration and reconciliation phase, we are hopeful that we can have this project up and running before the end of the fiscal year. However, that depends upon the quality of the temporary support that we get to assist with this endeavor. As you might imagine, this ransomware attack impacted not only the city, but it was a global impact. So the people with Kronos experience that can assist us are few and far between. So we are very hopeful that we will be able to meet that deadline by July 1, and are doing everything in our power to get that done.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Gray, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm referencing a finding from the auditors, and I'm referencing number 2021-004. And in this, they discuss that police vacation and compensatory time are not accurately tracked and maintained in the city's timekeeping system, Kronos, by the Department of Human Resources. But there's a note that a similar finding was reported for the year that ended June 30th, 2020, and that's prior to them having the spyware and going down. So it seems the problem persisted of the problem with compensatory tracking of the fire department prior to Kronos having a problem. So how, going forward in the future, are we correcting this problem and the fact that Kronos seemed not to be accurately tracking even prior to their web problem?
So thank you, Councilmember Gray. The tracking of police compensatory time, and it was the police department. The issue was not the software, but that the department maintains separate balances that are different and oftentimes not updated regularly within the Kronos system. So Kronos is only as accurate as the data that is put in to Kronos, and the department maintains separate tracking, not necessarily within Kronos, of their compensatory time. So the finding as it relates to that is totally separate and apart from the ransomware attack that occurred with Kronos. As indicated in the finding, the police department and the HR department are committed to working together so that the information that they track manually will now be tracked in Kronos, because Kronos and the city's and HR's records are the official records for the city of Wilmington. Again, obviously that's put on pause right now because of the Kronos ransomware attack, but that is something that we will be getting to.
Thank you very much. But the only thing is I hope you really work on it, because it was reported a year previous to this, and it seems like there were discrepancies of like $52,000 at that time. So thank you very much for the explanation.
All right. Director Barnes, let's move to question 3 about how the city is addressing retaining and attracting city employees to be competitive during this hybrid work schedule. Well, I guess it's not temporary, it seems to be permanent in some regards. So how has the city responded?
Okay, I think Deputy Director West is handling that question.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was on mute. So one of the ways that we have kind of pivoted to remain competitive is that we have ourselves adopted our own teleworking policy. And so this was initially implemented in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it was envisioned that it would remain in effect post-pandemic. And so we do currently have a teleworking policy. And while none of our positions within the city are exclusively and permanently remote, the policy does permit employees to work on remotely on a hybrid basis. But however, that is at the sole discretion of department heads and is approved on a case-by-case basis. And so just for some additional information, some of that discretion would require consideration of whether or not the individual's essential functions or job duties could be performed from home, and also that individual's job performance. And so again, it is approved on a case-by-case basis, but we do have a telework policy that should be a mutually beneficial arrangement for both the city and its employees. And the benefit for us is that it allows us to compete with those employers that are offering such flexibility to their employees. We do know and anticipate that teleworking will be around. It's not going anywhere. And so to continue to empower and enable our workforce to adapt to that, we will be providing training to department heads, management and supervisors and employees of how to manage and work in a remote workforce. And some of those training funds will be dedicated to that specific training.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. West. Let's see any questions on this one. So let's move on to question 4. Is there any highlights there? I guess 4 and 5 kind of smell.
So we currently have 3 vacant positions within the department. You see them listed on the chart. And while they have been vacant for a period of time, we are moving expeditiously to fill them. During the pandemic, we were exclusively focused on service impacting positions, and the recruiting for those other positions were stalled during that time period. We have an HRIS coordinator, which supports the payroll function. We have interviews for that position before month end. The labor relations specialist position, which is a grievance hearing officer, and they also handle labor management matters. Those matters are currently being handled by the director and the deputy director, and we sorely need to focus on the strategic vision of the department. And certainly there's a position that would handle this, and we're looking to fill that position in July of 2022. And our director of class and comp, we will be holding interviews before the end of the month. We're looking for both of those positions to be filled within the next 4 weeks.
Okay. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. I'm curious, Ms. Barnes, thank you for this presentation. It looks like that, your department has been functioning fine without them, some of them for, 8-9 months, even prior to the pandemic. Are you willing, in light of the property tax increase that the mayor is proposing, are you willing to forego hiring for at least 1 more year for some of these positions?
I certainly could not do that for the HRIS coordinator, and it would not be prudent to do that for the director of classification and compensation. It wouldn't be prudent for any of them. If the administration approached me and told me that I needed to do that, or if that was the direction of the leadership of the city, that would be something that I would have to do, but it's not ideal because, as I mentioned, for the labor relations specialist, those functions are currently being handled by the deputy and the director. There's no one within the department that handles those matters. That prevents us from getting to some of the things and providing the strategic direction that we need to get some of these other objectives accomplished. But I will do as is required of me.
Thank you.
All right. Anything in 5, Director Barnes?
So there are some proposed changes to positions within the department. There are 2 title changes. One is the employee benefits manager to more accurately reflect the work that is being handled by that position. It is the director of employee benefits title change only. We came before you a couple of years ago and created a retirement specialist, and we want to change that title to human resources specialist, giving that position the ability to do more things more broader. We envision more broader things than just retirement that individual could work on. So that would be a title change for the human resources specialist. There are 3 human resources administrators, and they are currently classified as executive and managerial employees, despite them not managing processes or people. And I understand that was legacy from something that occurred prior to my tenure in the department, but this would be more appropriately reclassify those positions and change them from the executive and managerial pay plan to the non-union pay plan, which is what everybody else in the department is in, except the division directors. And then we have the current employee benefits administrator. That position is functioning at a higher level, performing more IT and fiscal strategic operations for the benefits division. And there was an upgrade that was appropriate for that position.
Thank you very
Next
much.
slide.
We can move to question number 6. And I know you touched briefly on the opening about City University. So if we could talk about that a little bit more.
So when we were before you, I think a year or 2 ago, we talked about our plans for City University, which is a learning platform for, we envision as a learning platform for our employees that would help prepare them for upwardly mobile positions within the city of Wilmington, to enhance their skill sets, because our policy is to hire from within. However, that has been tabled clearly for the pandemic and other reasons as priorities shifted. And in this year, given that we are looking to enhance our performance management system that is sorely outdated, needed, and we currently have probably 5 different performance evaluation tools for various categories of employees within the city. We are looking to modernize and streamline that process, and we're going to be piloting a new program soon. So that's why the City University has been the priority shifted, and we will be looking to do that in the current fiscal year. Our class and comp system, obviously, if you don't have a leader in that department, it's kind of hard to have someone research, develop, and implement a new compensation system. So that is something that will be taking place in the next fiscal year. The research will begin in the 4th quarter of this year when we hire the individual, and the implementation will take place in the next fiscal year.
Thank you. See any questions on that? So guess we can move to question number 7.
Okay.
The ADP payroll services amount budget for that.
Okay, so there's $121,000 budgeted across the general fund in the miscellaneous services line. The vast majority of that is for outsourced workplace investigations. And we do that when there are harassment complaints that are that involve higher level individuals, or there are conflicts, or the nature of the complaint, we outsource those. And then there's also the vendor fee for outsourcing payroll processing. That's the money that's budgeted in those lines. There is $3,000 budgeted in the administration division for a beverage service that we have in the department. For employee orientation, when we have arbitrations and negotiations, we do provide water and coffee for the attendees of those meetings.
All right, we can then move to question number 8, Director.
Okay.
Workshops fund,
Okay.
budget line for workshops.
So the money budgeted for workshops for citywide management and training, there was questions around, and I think I took this question from Director West, but I'm going to go ahead since I already started. We have money budgeted for training and employment services. Again, there's money budgeted for Local GovU. Local GovU is a platform that we're currently using until we get City University up and running, and there is a fee for local GovU, and they have they have a myriad of trainings that we use on their platform. That's what that money is for. Currently, in the current fiscal year, 58, and last year 58 employees were trained, and so far to date 31. However, the recently required ethics training will go out over the local GovU platform. So those numbers will significantly rise as we begin to train the workforce on the ethics training.
Director, if I can add just to those numbers, because I think it's worth sharing that although there were 58 employees who completed the local GovU or other trainings, 183 courses were completed. And so that shows that of the employees that are taking advantage of the training, most of them, or a good number of them, are completing multiple courses. Again, for fiscal year 22, although it shows that 31 employees have completed training, about 74 courses have been completed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. West.
All right, just moving to the, I don't see any questions on this, so let's move to question number 9, Director. To discuss the plan used for approximately $33,000 for the food and trophies account grouping.
Absolutely. As an HR department, it is always important that we recognize employees for what they do and also provide opportunities for engagement opportunities for the workforce. So we have budgeted in our department, in the administration division, $6,000, and that helps fund a couple of the programs that we have, whether it is Take Our Sons and Daughters to Work, we recognize Customer Service Week, we recognize Payroll Week, and that's citywide where we do those things. And we also, as a department, have an annual HR team building event, and that's what's encompassed in the administration division. In employment services, that's where we have our years of service. We give employees, we recognize employees for their years of service for the city of Wilmington, and we typically do that in the May-June timeframe. So you'll be hearing some information about that shortly for this year.
All right, Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question. So the 27,000 is trophies, or is that like event plan, all of the events, or is that like, what does that include?
It's not just it's the gifts itself for years of service. It is the, if we do a banquet, last year we did not do a banquet. We had food trucks out in front of the building, and those being recognized were able to come and have lunch with the food trucks and receive their years of service recognition. So it is not just trophies. It is not just food. It is all of the above.
Okay. And can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on another slide or not, but in reference to surveying or doing assessment on employees throughout the city on like the environment and you know how they're feeling, what they need. Does that happen?
I believe that what we in HR are trying to do is to, one, as we say, put our gas mask on first and then move out to the workforce. So we recently completed a survey within the department, and we will be taking what we learned external as well. So surveying the workforce in terms of what their needs are, what their desires are, what their training needs are, has been done. The last time we did a training assessment was, I believe, 2 fiscal years ago. But in terms of engagement and satisfaction and things of that nature, that is on the horizon for us to do. Again, a lot of things have been stalled because of the pandemic. However, we are getting back up and running and not letting the pandemic stop us any longer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Director Barnes, let's shift to a different group of accounts, the Internal Services Funds. We could flip to question 10. Can you just give a brief overview of the rising healthcare costs for the city and exactly what the drivers are?
Actually, I will allow the employment, Donnie Smith to take this.
Yes, I figured Ms. Smith, this is her territory. So Ms. Smith is glad to have you this evening, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Just to let you know, there is a slide that the next slide actually goes line by line of all the major health insurance lines. So you can see the this year, last year. But overall, the main driver is the medical claims line, where you see that it has over $1.3 million increase. That's based on the actuarial trend as well as pent up demand from COVID. And then you'll notice in the other lines that we are experiencing increases and decreases that are natural, depending on, again, on trend, as well as some of our negotiated rates. I don't know if you have any questions on a particular line, otherwise I can move on to the next part of the question.
I don't see any particular questions. I think there may be some questions on the part B.
Okay. All right, so with part B, if you go to the next slide. Last year, when I was before council, we talked about the fact that we had launched a new strategic plan. Specifically, that new plan focuses on targeting chronic conditions, providing virtual care at all levels, as well as improving engagement, not only with our employees, but also with our retirees and our covered dependents. I've just shared a few of our highlights here. Our plan for FY23, though, is to repeat what's worked well and continue to customize our programming based on our city's families and their lifestyles. We do offer diabetes prevention classes on site. We had a retiree join us this time, so that's really exciting for us. We were featured as a case study that's being used within the state of Delaware and actually now nationally as a best-in-class employer for our work on diabetes prevention. We had a very successful Fall Fest in 2021. Again, we were actually recognized by President Congo and this council for our work with Fall Fest. And while that is a very fun event, this year it actually really focused on healthy actions. And specifically, Christiana Care was here regarding cancer awareness. 183 of our employees and retirees talked about cancer awareness, and 55 asked for personal follow-up, which is actually very important. We completed 151 blood pressures on site during Fall Fest. So again, really mixing the fun and the engagement with actual health screenings and prevention. We launched teletherapy at the start of this calendar year. And then we also launched a new series called March Madness. Every Tuesday in the month of March, we were either hosting a virtual workshop or meeting in person, providing one-on-one consultation, and actually even a workout out at the AARP Park. That series, went really well. So we'll repeat that for sure in the coming year. And then launching in July, we are excited about a new health marketing campaign that we've created. It's called We Go Hard for Health. It is an incentivized plan to reward employees and retirees for taking healthy action. So more good news to come on that. And on the next slide, I just provided some graphics that we've used. So you can see our Fall Fest flyer, our March Madness series, and then the center graphic is actually the front page of that national case study that I mentioned that we've been featured in this year.
Well, don't see any questions, Ms. Smith, so if we can dive to 11 and the reasons for the rising self-insurance costs.
I'll be taking this question, James Robb.
Okay. Floor is yours, Mr. Robb.
Yes, good evening. The funds budgeted for workers' compensation claims costs are derived from the actuary report for fiscal year 2021, which forecast expected costs based on the city payroll, pending case reserves, and other factors. So unless there's other questions, okay. The increased insurance costs for fiscal 23 is mostly due to a 25% increase in umbrella insurance premium and a hefty 116% increase in the cyber insurance premium. These increases, which seem very high, especially the cyber, are actually pretty modest considering the hard market in cyber insurance right now. Probably a third of the folks looking for renewal are being turned down completely some people are getting 300% plus increases. So we felt fortunate to get the increase we are projecting. There's also a small increase in legal defense and an increase for insurance claims. Of course, the insurance claims number comes from the actuary report also. Next slide. Insurance claims are mostly trending down thus far for fiscal 22, as you can see. Unless there are questions, there's the chart.
All right. Thank you very much.
The legal defense budget is down, I might point out, 27% from fiscal 21 and 44% from fiscal 2020, as we have less of the large complex cases. And also the law department has kept more matters increased in-house. Some of the civil rights and other matters are so complex and so large that they require a large specialized firm to provide the city with the best possible defenses, as has been demonstrated in the last few years with dismissals of multi-million-dollar cases and large reductions in what we were able to settle other cases for. For 12C, the city has adequate coverage for anticipated cyber breaches. Rather not go into too much detail on that. And 12D, the city has avoided having to carry large capital reserves for potential large verdicts due to the insurance. These verdicts are occurring throughout the country. I'm sure you all have been reading about them. And actually payouts from the excess general liability policy have almost paid for the first 6 years of the policy through fiscal 2020.
All right, Mr. Rob, or whoever's taking over, question 13. I don't see any questions, so we can move to question 13. The professional fee line.
Next slide. Yeah, I'll take that slide. You'll see here the list of all of the people whom we contract with in the professional fees lines. And they range from our broker for benefits, our broker for our insurance broker, the vendor for physician engagement, telemedicine, our FlexFax vendor, as well as the our dispensary medical provider, and the agencies that we contract with to do our screenings for fitness for duty exams and pre-employment screenings. You see here in the chart the list of time we've been with the individuals, the length of their contract, the length of time we've been with the individuals, and one of the individuals is a DBA. That's our medical doctor.
Okay. Thank you very much.
This is the temporary salary, the question about temporary salaries. There are temporary salaries budgeted in the risk management, workers' comp, and employee benefits fund. The bulk of those are the funding for the risk manager, but also in the workers' compensation fund, there's clerical support for peak times when they have fitness for duty exams or when we're hiring for summer youth. And then in the employee benefits area, so that supports their peak times during open enrollment, fall fast, or when they have a different program implementation.
Okay. All right, Director. I don't see any questions. We can move to 15.
So memberships and registrations, you hear me say each time I'm before you that any HR director worth their weight definitely promotes and supports professional development for their team. And what you see in this question is there's a question about the memberships and registration and travel. So in the risk management fund, there's memberships and professional development for the 2 staff members in that division. And workers' comp, it's for the 4 people in that division. For employee benefits, in addition to it, in the $49,000 includes not only professional development for the 4 employees in that division, but also for the various education and wellness initiatives. The misnomer here is that in the membership and registrations account grouping, workshops and training is included in that account grouping, and the Fall Fest money is budgeted in that account grouping. So that's what makes the 49,000 seem out of place.
Thank you very much. And just finishing up, Director Barnes, we are running short on time, so we can hop right to question 17. As I've asked all department heads, do you have any suggestions if we were to do a little trim of the department, some lines that council could look at?
Well, the 2% would equate to about $46,000, Chairman Johnson. And in looking at our lines within the department, we do not budget for fluff in our budget. You know, what we budget for, the things that we actually need and will spend. If I had to make a cut in any of those lines, I would probably focus on those contingent obligations. And by that, I mean, we budgeted money for external investigations. If we don't have them, you know, I wouldn't need to spend that money. But if we don't budget that money and something comes up, we'd have to go to the administration to say, where's the money going to come from? So I think it's prudent to keep that money in the budget. Likewise, if we said, hey, let's take the money from the arbitration fees for any union that may want to take us to arbitration on a particular matter. The reality of it is, if we have to go to arbitration, we have to pay that fee. So those are contingent obligations, but everything else I would say are things that we actually believe are meaningful and necessary for the department to operate. Otherwise, you know, I talked about employee recognition of the employees for their years of service. That would be a significant amount of money, but I do believe it's prudent that we recognize our employees.
Thank you. And any questions from council members? Councilmember Oliver, floor is yours.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate, I don't know if I missed this. Will you be acknowledging Beth for all her years of service?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, let me clarify that. We acknowledge milestone years of service. So they're on the increment of every 5th year. So it's 5, 10, you know, at every year, we every 5th year, there is an acknowledgement of years of service. We are looking to potentially, or we had explored in the past, the potential to at least recognize 1 year of service, because that is significant, you know, when individuals get to their 1 year. But the focus has been on every 5th year of service that we recognize that milestone.
Thank you. May I follow up?
Yes, please.
Ms. Barnes, so how many years does Beth have? And I'm just sorry, then I'm done with. How many years does she have? How many years does Beth have?
Oh, Beth?
Yeah.
Beth had
roughly.
Beth did two tours of duty with the city. She actually worked with Mayor McLaughlin, his administration, and the Frawley administration. She left, raised her children, came back and worked another, I think totally she has 25 years.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
And I appreciate, again, we all both love and appreciate Ms. Copson. So any information about any going away celebration, could you please make sure it's circulated to council?
Well, Chairman Johnson, it was last Friday.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. All right. Anyway, again, we thank you very much. And lastly, Councilmember Darby.
Yes, thank you guys. I don't know if this question, I had to step away a few times, but did we talk about, would there be a potential impact on HR or the city with I know minimum wage over a few years will be going to $15 an hour. Did you guys talk about that?
We did not, Councilmember Darby. However, I can assure you that every full-time city employee with the city of Wilmington, there's no city employee that makes less than $15 an hour. When we negotiated the most recent contract, we made sure of that. So there's no city employee that makes less than $15 an hour.
Okay, and can I follow up?
I'm
sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I thought you were finished.
Yes, you can.
No, I'm sorry. And for our temporary employees, as minimum wage increases, it's most profoundly impacted in the Parks and Recreation Department because they employ a lot of temporary employees. But each year, when the budget is prepared, the Office of Management and Budget ensures that the appropriate rate is budgeted for our temporary employees and ensure that we have the funds to cover those increases in minimum wage.
Okay. May I follow up?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was gonna. You was reading my mind. I was gonna ask about the temporary employees, or like staffing agencies we use. Are they at least getting paid at least $15 an hour too, or no?
I don't want to answer that with certainty. I'm reasonably confident that they are, but I can do the work, the research, and circle back to you.
Okay, thank you. And one last thing. So I know $15 in a few years as our minimum wage is not going to be livable wage. Do we constantly assess what livable wage looks like for the city of Wilmington and adjust to make sure that we're meeting at least that standard? Or are we just doing $15 because that's what the conversation is right now?
What we're doing, quite honestly, Councilmember Johnson, is for the 75% of our workforce that is unionized, their salaries and their wages are negotiated. So, while there is work done when we go to the bargaining table to know what is affordable, I believe I have confidence that our Director of Classification and Compensation will be playing a role in that. We'll be doing just that as well. But 75% of our workforce, their wages are negotiated. So we do look for to make sure that we are appropriately compensating individuals, but that is a negotiation. So that's where we land as far as that's concerned.
Okay, and what about the non-union, the other 25%? What does that look like?
The other 25%, they receive salary increases that are typically on par with the increases that are negotiated for the union. And when council passes the budget each year, their salary increases and their pay scale will be attached to that as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Barnes. I'm going to flip it to the public real quick to see if there's any questions or comments by members of the public. All right. Seeing none, I'm going to turn it back to members of council for any final questions or comments. All right. Seeing none, I would like to thank again Director Barnes, Ms. West, and also Ms. Smith, Mr. Robb, and Mr. Waymeyer from OMB for presenting this evening. Any follow-up information, as always, please provide it to Ms. Marshall Bass-Knight so she can post on the City Council page. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right, the HR budget hearing has completed. We will begin, we're running only slightly behind schedule. We'll begin at 7:45 p.m. for the Law Department hearing. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Honorable members of council, Chief of Staff Washington, department heads, and members of the public. This time I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee budget hearing for the Law Department. First, I would like to start by recognizing members of the Finance Committee that are in attendance by doing roll call. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Council Member Oliver, 3rd District. Council Member Field, 8th District. At large Council Member Walsh, I believe it's excused. At large Council Member Spadola.
Present.
Council President Congo.
Here.
I also would like to recognize the other council persons in attendance by doing roll call. Councilmember Gray, 1st District.
Present.
Councilmember Darby, 2nd District. Councilmember Fields, 5th District.
Present.
Councilmember McCoy, 6th District.
Here.
All right, Councilmember Oliver, I have you down.
Thank you.
Present. And Councilmember Cabrera at large. And Councilmember Mills at large.
Present.
Okay. All right, and first I would like to inform everyone that public comments will be asked at the end of this budget hearing, and we look forward to engagement from the public. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If there's any follow-up information during any of the budget hearings, Ms. Bass Knight from City Council will track and follow up on those requests. I ask that if my colleagues have any questions, as always, please use the raise hand feature. And at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Waymeyer from the Office of Management and Budget for a financial overview, followed by a introduction and overview by City Attorney Bob Goff, then a question and answer with council. The floor is yours, Mr. Waymeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of City Council. During this time, we will review the major funding changes within the Law Department's proposed budget for fiscal year 2023. Next slide, please. Overall, the department's budget increased by roughly $93,000 or 3.6%. Personal services increased by $91,000 or 4.3%. And MS&E was essentially flat with a small increase of $1,000 or 0.3%. And the level of staffing remains the same as last year. Next slide, please. So highlighting the major funding changes are the following. Regarding staffing, personal services rose $91,000. Regular salaries increased by approximately $66,000 due to regular step increases and cost of living adjustments. Pension contributions went up $15,000. Pension healthcare increased by $6,000. And the nuisance property manager received an upgrade from grade O, step 7 to grade P, step 6 for a total cost of $1,500. For MS&E, electronic legal research with LexisNexis rose by $1,000. And for more information about the department's budget, please reference page 104 of the budget book. And in closing, we can discuss a question or two before we hear from the city solicitor and team.
Seeing no questions, I'll then hand it over to you, Mr. Goff.
Good evening, Chairman Johnson, Vice Chair Harley, members of the Finance Committee, and any other members of council, as well as the public that are present here today. I appreciate the opportunity that you've given me here to present a Law Department's fiscal year 2023 budget with the assistance of my Deputy City Solicitor, Rose Tassoni, and also my Chief Administrative Person, and that would be Javette Lane, who are also on the panelist on this call. Once again, as the current circumstances of the city justify and require, I am presenting to you for your approval and consideration a lean budget designed to meet the visions and goals of the department in its service to the city, its component legislative and executive branches, and its many departments, boards, and commissions. This effort, as always, involves striking a delicate balance between the provision of advice, services, and courtroom litigation in-house by the senior and other assistant city solicitors, and looking to outside counsel when the small size of our department, an intense and complex and large-scale project arises, or expertise or specialized legal practice is either necessary or appropriate to reach the best outcome and also to get the best value for the city. And when those things come together to push us in the direction of outside counsel. In achieving this balance, the law department places the welfare and best interests of the city at the front of its considerations. Our department is a small one, but it has always had a big job. And we have 10 lawyers and 7 support staff who cover a multitude of various areas of the law, providing frank and informed advice to all the constituent parts of city government. As I have said before in previous meetings, opportunities I've had to meet with this committee in earlier years in budget hearings, while I sought to check any budgetary expansion as best I could and to keep the law department on a short fiscal leash, I've always stressed the need, in fact, I think it's an absolute necessity, to foster a culture in the department that will attract, allow for the development, and retain a dedicated and diverse core of lawyers and support staff to give the best possible service to the city. To that end, as was already noted, there are some pay increases that have taken place through the regular evaluation process, which I think is very important in order to maintain a professional staff. And so we engage in those regular evaluations and pursue appropriate yearly merit-linked raises in what we consider to be a collegial and welcoming atmosphere. And so in doing this, as was noted a couple of years ago when there was compensation studies, I believe we've been somewhat effective in bringing the compensation of the law department, its lawyers, paralegals, and administrative staff closer to similar employees of municipal and county governments of the region. So I'm proud to say that we currently have no vacancies, as is one of your questions, and our most recent exits have been the result of retirements. And that's not always been the case. And so there have been sort of flights to other government agencies that pay better in the past, and I think we're making some ground in that regard. So our staff here at the law department is, I think, smart, hardworking, and dedicated to the department's vision of excellence. And I want to thank the Deputy City Solicitor, Rose Tassoni DiNardo, and Administrative Supervisor Devette Lane, as well as my entire staff for all that they do for the law department and for the city. So I'll now entertain any questions as best I can, and we can go through this in whatever manner you want, Chairman.
Thank you very much, City Attorney Goff. I'm just looking at the vacancy report, and I did notice there was already a legal assistant 1 vacancy. Mm-hmm. Is that a error in the report? Because I saw, is that not a vacancy or is it?
Well, we don't have any vacant spots right now. I'm not, if the report says that there's no vacancies right now. We do have 1 person who just retired. And I don't know, I see Mr. Weimeyer up there. I don't know if he wants to address that or not.
City Solicitor Goff, I can address that. Excuse me if you'll let me.
Sure.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, President Congo, and members of City Council. We no longer have a vacancy. At the time that report was generated, there was a vacancy. That vacancy has since been filled.
Okay, and then there's a new retirement.
Well, we will have our retirement. We have someone who is retiring, but she is still an employee. She is still on the books, and she will not be off the books until the end of June.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you very much. And just going to question number 2, are there any proposed changes?
Hey, if we could put that up on the screen, question 2. Let me get to that. All right, question number 2. Yes, the proposed change is a result of priority of the administration with regard to the nuisance team dealing with properties that constitute regular nuisances on to the city and are identified as such. We previously had someone who's acting as the administrator, but it was determined that he needed to have a more active role in managing other members of the department. He has, I believe, 1 administrative staff and actually maybe 2 administrative staffs that are members that are working with him, and he supervises and coordinates. So based upon sort of an expansion of his role in seeking to identify those properties and to aggressively pursue remediation of them and whatever appropriate action might take place, it was appropriate to upgrade his position to a nuisance manager position and to have a slight pay raise as a result.
All right. Turning to question number 3, can you discuss the planned use of the approximately $270,000 for legal fees?
Okay, so the labor negotiations of $145,000, that is money that we've dedicated to outside counsel and also to experts that are necessary to do a compensation and other kinds of studies. We do have 1 contract which is coming due in the end of this year, June, so the beginning of fiscal year. So we've already started on that. I'm not sure whether or not Director Barnes mentioned, but that is beginning already. And then during fiscal year 23, we'll have 2 additional contracts that we have to work on at that time. Also, and so those are fees that are for outside counsel for that. Real estate transactions, there's a small budget for real estate that are primarily devoted to economic development in the Department of Economic Development. And finally, we also engage outside counsel when there are complex transactions. And so this is an amount that is budgeted for that.
Okay. What about section 3B about DBEs?
3B. Okay, so why don't we move to that? On the screen, there it is. I mean, my answer to this is kind of similar to what it was in previous years, and that is that the code is, Wilmington City Code is pretty specific about what a DBE is. And so because of the 51% ownership or management requirement, or ownership requirement plus management control, we don't really have that. And also there's some standards developed based upon the amount of assets that a disadvantaged person might have. So it makes it difficult because, when we go to outside counsel, we're seeking counsel that can't do what we can do or they can't do it, they can do it more efficiently than we do, or they have knowledge that we don't have. And usually what that means is that they have a lot more resources at their hand. They are able to do jobs that we don't have the resources to do. And to be honest about that, we haven't really changed any of our vendors. You'll notice that the question usually talks about contracts with the firms. We don't really have contracts. These are firms that we use, and a lot of the things that we go to for outside counsel and for firms outside of us, they're things that we've been doing for a long time. Like we have the wastewater treatment, plant agreement, which has been going on for a while, and then we have the dispute with the Army Corps of Engineers over stormwater management. We have a series of different things that last for years. And so those firms that we're satisfied with what they're doing. So we can't really engage. It wouldn't make sense for us to to re-engage on that. So I guess that's the answer to that. But there's another question that you have concerning diversity and inclusion, which I think is more appropriate. I don't think it's this one, but I can address it right now since I think it is related to the DBE question.
I have just a general question.
Sure.
Maybe the term DBE probably is not the most applicable to law firms, but surely there must be some minority or law firms with minority partners.
Sure. Well, we do have that then. If you have a more expansive, less technical, legal code-based definition, you will see that, for example, one of the great law firms in this city is, and I don't really want to call these firms out too much because it's, I don't like to inject myself into their business too much, but there's the president of RLF is a person who would constitute diverse, additional diversity. We also have each of these firms have very strong diversity inclusion programs and reports of how they are bringing in attorneys and other staff and how they support diverse communities, whether it's gender-based or LGBT, or whether it's racially based. And firms like RLF, Young Conaway, Stargate Taylor, some of the great firms that have been extremely successful in assisting the city in getting the best possible results. I hate to not call it those two because there's so many others that are just as good and do the same kind of thing. Eckert Siemens, any of those folks that we use at various times, they have robust diversity inclusion policies and actively recruit folks that would make their work environment more diverse and more effective as a result. So I did after our last meeting a year ago, do the research to find out what they did. And I'm happy to share those things with you or any other members of council.
Yes, that would be helpful. We could just share, just so all council members feel comfortable.
Great.
Share the diversity efforts of those law firms that contract with the city.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much. And moving on to, I guess that leads into 4. Do you have any highlights about the legal fee lines?
Well, I mean, if you want me to talk about what they are, I guess the risk management is $660,000. Was 660, it's now 800,000. Mr. Rob, I think, talked about that at the last meeting. That's the same figure because these figures do generally come from the departments because they're not part of the law department's budget. City Council has this year engaged in getting some assistance that's legally related. That we oversee to some degree, but of course, it maintains independence. As much as we can with regard to that and under the charter. So that's in there. The most significant difference isn't really the 117 that is mentioned up there in the question. The most significant change would be the finance line dealing with wage and head tax collection, which is a larger figure than in previous years. And I don't know if you've seen finance yet, or you might see them in the future, obviously. But that essentially has to do with a COVID-related issue. It's probably an issue that's been developing over the course of years, and that is of people who aren't working as much in the city and working more out. So that causes a lot of accounting as well as legal issues and requires some specialized assistance, which is given to the department with the oversight from the law department. So I think that the rest of it is pretty clear. Human resources, they've set the amount that is set there. The Public Works Water Fund is what we hope is left over from the wastewater treatment plant agreement, which is very close to, I'm happy to say, is very close to reaching fruition. And so we think that hopefully there won't be too much need for more of that, but nothing's signed so far. And it has been, as has been reported by the press, a very expensive endeavor for both the city and for the county. So.
All right, Councilmember Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you tell me how many suits are under Public Works besides just the water sewer fund? I think there's something with the federal government about water or something we own. I think there are other.
I can't really hear you very well.
Somebody
Okay.
has background noise.
Okay, I'll leave and come back later. Sorry.
I mean, I'll answer your question.
Oh, I understand. I do have background noise. I have to find a quiet place. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I can do the best I can to answer that question. You know, the wastewater treatment agreement goes in line with the wastewater treatment arbitration, which was revving up to an arbitration several months ago before the county mayor and the county executive, in conjunction with the law department, were able to reach an agreement in principle. So that is hopefully coming to a close. But we also have issues with regard to the REBF, which is the biosolids plant, and vendors such as Veolia and Honeywell. And there's money that is involved with outside counsel in that matter. We also do have litigation going with regard to the Army Corps of Engineers concerning stormwater management. Although not to make a pun out of it, that's kind of a drop in the bucket compared to what the fees are associated with the wastewater treatment plant. So I think that is it. I would ask Rose Tassoni DiNardo, my deputy city solicitor, who's much more in tune with litigation as our litigation chief, if I've missed anything in that regard.
You haven't. Councilwoman Gray, was the federal case that she was referring to would be the Army Corps of Engineers case dealing with stormwater. And that's really the only actual lawsuit, I believe. The other one is, as you've noted, the agreement with the county, which is an arbitration. And then there's a couple other matters that we are negotiating to avoid litigation. And they are related to the wastewater treatment plant and the REBF.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for the background.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
I see Councilman McCoy.
Yes, Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is about the finance, the collection expenses. So wanted to find out the amount that you actually put in these lines to actually collect funds for finance. Give just a little information about those two numbers. Is it just water bills, or like where are we looking at?
There's a couple of things, and now this is done under some limited oversight from the law department, but mostly it is like all the things that are in the individual departments, including city council. It kind of operates to some degree autonomously, and like council set the 75,000 for this and so on. So it's true also of these finance department provisions. But Director Brett Taylor has provided me with some information on that, so I'm happy to answer. Basically, these things are to provide, there's wage tax advice and tax compliance review. There's collection for property for wage tax also that is done, some of it through outside counsel. There's things that aren't necessarily legal. It might be just sort of collections in a less legal sense, which is not not necessarily lawsuits, it might be just efforts at collection, which I believe Director Taylor also included in that. There is, the law department does sheriff sale work for nuisance properties. In other words, the properties I was talking about with regard to the nuisance manager that are problems and where action needs to be taken because they're problems, not as much because they owe money to the city. But the finance department collects with regard to, water, with regard to property tax, with regard to, I'm trying to think what else, wage tax, and those, and also they collect when you have fines and related to violations of the code. So they do the collections of these things. That is a kind of how you would lump all of this stuff, all of these three categories together. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. There are some work is being done by outside firms specializing in particular constituents, and I don't necessarily mean individuals, but particular constituents that owe us money, and they're complex entities, and therefore, as a result, require some additional effort. And so there's some of that. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much the gamut of what those fees are. I hope that answers your question, Councilmember Boyd.
Somewhat. Chair, may I follow?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So you did explain about the, especially when it comes to the wage, and that's actually its own separate thing. And we understand, and I actually understand and participated in that years ago in another term about, making certain that people actually are getting, the wage tax is actually being applied. But when it came to the water in general, I feel as though finance actually takes care of a lot of these things with their 96 hours and the little cards and all that stuff. And if it's actually not part of going before like a court of law or a writ of admissions or whatever, I'm not understanding where this fee is. What is behind that fee?
Well, that's to hire that's the lawyer. The lawyer that they use to do that is that's one of the things that it's used for.
Oh, so this is basically to pay a lawyer, and if we have to go that route.
Right. So this is all these things here are legal fees that are not in the law department's line.
Okay.
So like, for example, city council, that's not in the law department's line. City councils has two firms that's assisting them right now. And so that's what that is. HR is going to use outside counsel to do this. There's also other fees that aren't just counsel. They might be like things that are related to collection, like tracing an individual, skip tracing an individual that you might have a lawsuit against, or like I said, some of it with regard to finance is a collection process apart from filing a lawsuit in court, and separate from the 96-hour shut off. I think that, yeah, so.
Okay.
Did I miss your point?
Well, no, thank you. You actually did. You answered the question. And I just have one suggestion. Wouldn't it be actually, instead of having to do line items for $455,000, if we actually had a lawyer within your group that actually kind of like specialized in those things?
So I tend to agree that would be great. I mean, I would love to have a department and a salary line that would be able to hire the kind of specialized law practice lawyers that you would need for that sort of thing. but that's a sort of a philosophical thing. I think there is room for that kind of thing, but I also think that the folks that we hire to do these things, they specialize it. We really here at the city, in our law department, really have our hands in many different areas with 10 lawyers. And the firms that they use, especially for the wage tax, as you point out, is not just it's actually I think it's an accounting firm that has lawyers. So it's an accounting firm that specializes in taxation, that has attorneys that work for them. And I don't know how you would, I mean, that would be a very, very big change. It's certainly one that should be thought of. There is a movement afoot for the last several years among corporations, which used to farm out everything they did. There is a movement afoot to bring counsel back inside, but that would require a commitment to, instead of seeing, the law department's budget raised by, 4% just because we're trying to keep up with attorneys in the county and at the state level and the city and the county level, to, because our only budget is people pretty much, would be an increase in budget of 100% or 150%. And if you wanted a specialized attorney who could do these things, rather than kind of a generalist, it would be even more, because we have to attract those people. And I'm happy that we're attracting the people we have. We have great lawyers, great staff, but but to get the best results, to get the best advice, this is the way I think it's going to work, at least in 2023.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move to question 5. We are running a little short on time. So question 5 is just anything you have to elaborate on the Ethics Commission.
The only thing I will say is that, over the last 3 or 4 years, the Ethics Commission has become robust. I hate to throw that term around. It was dying on the vine for years, and now it's pretty active. It has a happy and full commission. It has attracted really fine people to serve on it, former judges, partners in major firms that do this all for free. The reason why I think it continues to do so well is because it has a dedicated person to assist them, and who's doing it at a discount. As a result, they are constantly telling me how pleased they are with the assistance they receive. And they process complaints. For a while, they didn't have any, and they process them. These numbers here don't really reflect anything near the amount of time and thought that is put into these matters by both the members of the commission as well as their counsel.
Thank you. And we can skip 6. I think the self-explanatory. And 7 as well. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Then I wanted to kind of just end on question 9.
Where is
question 9? Yes, question 9, as you know, is similar to question other departments have gotten. Do you have any suggestions to council if we were looking to trim 2%, knowing that, of course, I know you have a tight budget and a lot of it's personnel costs. So
yeah, I did trim, but the things I trimmed were like a lot of miscellaneous lines. I would cut 500 here, 200 there, and things of that nature. The problem I have, if you look at this, and that makes sense because if you the personal services increased by 4.3%, I think, if I'm reading this correctly, and that's less than the percentage of what the overall budget increased. for the law department. And that's because, like I said, I need to get people to come and come here to apply so that I can get a better, a more diverse and, group of folks and I also need to retain them so that they can, do a good job and learn the ropes and be more effective. So that maybe they will be able to have that specialized knowledge to handle particular areas in the future if I can keep them long enough. So it's hard for me to trim much more because since I did trim another 1 or 2% off the things that were not related to people working here. And we've already, a couple of years back, right before I got here, I think there had been 2 positions taken away and we couldn't really do the job. So then one position had to come back again before I got here. We work on a pretty tight leash. There's not a whole lot of traveling and there's no freebies here. We just come in, do our job because we're proud of what we do and do it the best we can. But we also have to make sure we pay our folks enough that they stick around.
And at this time, Mr. Actually, how many minority attorneys do you have?
Well, we lost one minority attorney and we have now one minority attorney. So there was only one lawyer that was hired over the last year and that filled that spot.
Okay, excellent.
And you asked me last year, so I want to tell you, I did my homework. You told me that and I told you I was going to do it. I went to the diversity fair last July. I'm going to do it again this July for they're a bunch of third-year law students and second years as well, 2Ls as well. And I tell you, it was a great experience. The maximum people you could talk to were like, I think it was like 8, and I ended up selecting 7, and 6 showed up. And it was really a great experience and met a lot of great people. Unfortunately, the problem with me going there in July is I didn't have any openings for them. And had any of them put their names in for spots, I certainly would have considered them. None of them had Delaware bars, so that makes it difficult. And it's hard to hire a lawyer that doesn't already have their admission. But they all expressed interest. They're all well-spoken. It was, I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to try to figure out how I can get them to think about this. Well, I'm going to try to figure out how I can make outreach if and when I lose someone in the future.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much for that overview. Now, Council Member Oliver has a question.
Yeah, you skipped over. Can you go back a slide? One more. Right, I was looking at the 17 permanent employees. Now, have you let any of them go due to COVID or, I guess because of COVID, because I'm just thinking the building was closed. I know a lot of people were working from home, or do you intend on keeping, I guess the first question, do you still have all 17 working? Are they all full-time?
Well, I think we have 17 employees on the books right now. They are working. One is retiring, and therefore that person has served their last day in the office. We can't fill that spot until late June, end of June, I think I heard. Folks are, we follow the CDC and city guidelines. We allow people to work from home on a set schedule and take account of the work that they do so that, we want to make sure people are doing the job. But people are working in the office. They were working in the office through COVID and to some degree, as would be prudent. And they were working from home, because there's a lot of stuff you could do. I mean, the good thing about the law department is, we don't have to physically go places most of the time. We were just sort of talking to people like I'm talking to you right now, Council Member Oliver, or we're, send documents, or were filing things. And then a lot of the problems we were dealing with were COVID-related problems because the law and caused a lot of questions there too. So we kept busy during that time, and the lawyers here kept busy.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it now to members of the public if there's any questions or comments. All right, going once, going twice. Now I'm going to go back to members of council. Any final comments or questions from members of council?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, council member.
No, I wanted to thank your office. I'm always bugging Javette and Rose, and I bug you a lot too, but I just want to thank you for the outstanding job you do.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
And again, I'd like to thank City Attorney Goff, Rose Tassone, Javette Lane, Mr. Waymeyer, OMB from OMB for presenting this evening, and any follow-up information I ask that you provide to Ms. Marshall Bassnight. So at this time, I would like to make some closing remarks. I would like to thank OMB for again joining us, department heads and WITN, members of the public. The next budget hearing is scheduled for this upcoming Monday, April 18th. We have at 4:30, we have revenue projection, important segment. Then we have finance department at 5, and then IT department at 6:15. As always, please tune into WITN channel 22 to watch the meeting. You can also watch online at www.witn22.org. For budget information, you can go to the city's website at wilmdebudget.org. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
Second, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Everyone have be safe and well. Take care.
Take care.
Night.